Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Coffee Retail Summit. My name is Jen Ruggalo, and I am the Specialty Coffee Association's editor. Before I introduce our first speaker this morning and share a little bit about why I am so excited to have them join us, I have a few quick housekeeping things as usual. If you missed any of yesterday's talks, we have recorded everything and we will be uploading it to YouTube and to the site. And you'll want to make sure that you are on our mailing list to be notified when these recordings are available. And if you're not subscribed already, the best way to do this is to head over to retail.sca.coffee/RSVP to sign up. Whether you're joining us live today or viewing today's presentations after the fact, coming in from another time zone, I just want to mention that this site, retail.sca.coffee, is also a resource library full of valuable content dedicated to the challenges and opportunities of coffee retail businesses. We hope that you'll take some time today or sometime in the future to check out the resources created with you in mind. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our partners. This iteration of Coffee Retail Summit, a free-to-access 2-day summit and associated resource library, was made possible with the support of our title sponsor, BWT Water & More, and our lead sponsors, Baratza and Sanremo, as well as our supporting sponsors, Frankie and Marco. Thank you so much for supporting coffee retail businesses with us. And one last thing before we dive in, we invite all of you to take part in the chat happening to the right of this window during today's sessions. Don't forget that you can ask questions there of the speakers at any point during their presentation. Please pop them in as you think of them so you don't forget them. We'll be collating these to answer during the Q&A session afterwards. Okay, now we're going to get on to our first presentation. We are starting today with the potential of sustainable economics in specialty coffee, the story of Fuglin. I am going to be joined by Einar Holt, founder and CEO of Fuglin, a specialty coffee retailer and roaster with locations in Oslo, Norway, and Tokyo, Japan. Einar began his coffee journey, we realized this earlier, just a few moments ago, 20 years ago in 2001 with Tim Wendelboe at Stockplus, where he worked his way into the role of CEO before starting the Fuglin we know today. Einar's tenure at Stockplus coincided with the emergence of direct trade, and the drive for transparent trade in coffee led him to found the strategic development company Natural State. It is the combination of Einar's tenure in coffee alongside his current work in sustainability that makes us, and me in particular, so very happy to welcome him here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Einar. If you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for a very nice introduction, Jen. I'm very honored to be here and be allowed to share my learnings from my altogether 20 years in coffee, I guess now. 10 years in Stockplus and 10 years with Fuglin in Oslo in Japan.
Brilliant. Well, I will leave you to it. I can't wait. And I've got my notebook ready.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be sharing my screen very quickly. And I hope this is now looking okay. Jen, are you seeing my presentation now?
Yes, it looks brilliant.
Perfect. Then we're all set to go. The story of Fuglin and how I traveled from coffee into sustainability economics. It's going to be quite a massive presentation. I'm going to speak fast and I'm going to do a lot of slides because it is kind of a complex and interesting journey. But I think the learnings that I have done working with specialty coffee and what I was a part of in the early 2000s when direct trade and transparency trade really disrupted the market has been something that I brought with me in all my other works. And that is something I'm very proud of, and I always tell this to everybody I'm talking to and advising about where this understanding of value chain and coherence is in the market and the global and the local understanding comes from working with coffee. So everybody that works with coffee should be very proud and happy to work with it in how we work with it on the specialty coffee and working with kind of a sustainable and ethical approach. So this is Fuglin since 1963, Oslo, Tokyo. It began quite before me. I'm born in 82. So there's a few years of difference between there, but I'm going to talk about that and give you the quick insight. And then also I'm going to also talk about the topics of today. And it said Oslo and Tokyo on the slide. In 2009, when we started Fuglin, we had a goal to have one shop in Oslo, one in Tokyo. and one in New York. So nice to have a picture of New York as well, as we also are going to look at this with a natural state perspective and the potential of sustainable economics in specialty coffee. So to begin with the beginning, this is how I present myself when I'm giving advice to some of the biggest companies in Norway and city development and municipalities. It is really cornered by coffee. It is Fuglin up on the left side, and it's Stockfoots down on the right side. All of these in between I will talk about after, but it's about working with a strategic approach as a market ideologue and sustainability economist in the new market. This is what we work with. And we work with this approach in several topics. If it's city development, if it's municipal business development, if it's trade organizations, anything that needs to understand its position in the new market, which is then aware. I will come back to that. But again, it began with the coffee for me. 2001, I came from the west coast of Norway, moved to Oslo. Met Tim at Stockfoots Lillegrensen, the one shop we had at that time. And I was brought up in a quite kind of aware community, working with the kind of solidarity and in a kind of commune collective with my parents. And I was very concerned about the ethical sustainability of coffee and trade in general. I was very oriented towards the global kind of solidaric understanding of value creation. So when I met specialty coffee and understood the work that was kind of emerging out of fair trade and the awareness of human sustainability and ethical trade, and being disrupted by this brand new invention that with internet just a few years before, disrupting and making everything transparent. So this is what I came to and understood the dynamics of. I was supposed to be an engineer, but I really got stuck with coffee, and I stayed in this company for 10 years, working with understanding the value chains of coffee, telling the story of the farmers in the market of where we retailed it with our coffee houses. So Stockfoots Coffee and Tea since 1895, we changed the specialty coffee store into a kind of direct trade ambassador. Transparency trade ambassador. Everything was about showing where things came from and creating knowledge institutions in the cityscape, which also served a good place to be for, of course, the customers, a good atmosphere, and a welcoming and service-oriented attitude, of course. But it was filled with knowledge and kind of pride in representing the value chain of coffee all the way back to these farmers that was then identified. 2001, when I started, it was called Kenya AA, it was called Special Blend, it was called Colombia Excelso, and it was called just Guatemala. We had no idea where it came from in the country. It was all kind of non-transparent structures. And this is what emerged over the 10 years of 2001 to 2011. And I think Stockfoots was a part of it. And my engagement with coffee was incredibly big. I was part of the Nordic barista team. I became the national champion in barista art in 2007. And that's when I discovered Japan in the World Championship. And I was really all about understanding the potentials of doing something interesting and good in a new way with the coffee trade industry. So this was one of the origins, and it was very nice to be in this position because it was about collaborating in the market. So we collaborated with all the guys in the US, all the guys in Copenhagen and Sweden. It was kind of really understanding our position in the value chain and collaborating on the specialty coffee field with lots of amazing people. Soben Hansen, Tim, Stumptown, there's so many drivers of this, and we were a part of that. It was so fun and so nice to be a part of that movement. So that that was my formative years, 2001 to 2011. It was also the formative years of specialty coffee. So I was very lucky to be aligned with that. So here comes Fuglin in. Fuglin was a subsidiary and company of Stockfoots. I started at Stockfoots as a barista, and then I was the daily manager of Fuglin the year after. It was kind of run as a secret Stockfoots shop. It was more free and independent, and it was really nice to be there. It became the hangout spot for all the baristas in Oslo at this time. And I ran this together with Tim, Alex, a lot of other nice people. We were also linked to the Soben Hansen system. It was really about understanding that. And we got to travel to farms. We got to see this. So this is the basic learnings and travel. And then something happened in 2005. I got a child, my daughter, and I decided to stay for coffee. And when I said that, they offered me, and Tim quit to go to make his Tim Wendelbo, his roastery in Stockflits, and they asked me to take the position as the CEO of Stockflits. So when I was 24, I became the CEO of Stockflits, and I was there as a CEO for 7 years, working with both Fuglen and Stockflits, and really working with direct trade and transparency trade in the coffee industry. At the same time, as I had a lot of fun with working with Fuglen. So in 2007, I was the Norwegian barista champion. I was in Japan, and in 2008, we were bought by the biggest food company in Norway Group, and I got the opportunity to take Fuglen as a kind of a private hobby project. And this is where I wanted to explore how you could expand the space, not only working with a very high quality and transparent and kind of high integrity coffee institution, but also add nightlife. I find it very interesting to have some cocktails and drinks at the evening. And also Fuglen was very special because it was unique from the 1963. So we wanted to take care of the historic value, and we added a vintage shop. So we created the first multi-concept where we were working with kind of sustainability in all contents, taking care of local produce, working with ecological ingredients in the drinks, working with, of course, direct trade and transparency trade with coffee, and also working with the reuse and the kind of refurbishing and vintage furnishing in Fuglen. So it became 3 different separates. This was in 2008. And that is kind of where Fuglen is and the legacy of Fuglen. It is a brand that was developed or a company that was started in 1963, but we developed it in 2008 into something more. We added values to it. We added value chains to it. We added the furniture. We added the cocktails and the nighttime, and we added kind of the whole elements. And this was together with the 2 very good friends of mine. I was still the CEO of Stockfoot, so I was kind of managing from the side and working together with them at nighttime, and because I had my day job. And we developed this together into something that kind of became quite much richer. And it taught us a lot. So it was very interesting. And this was my approach to Oslo. So to just really get into, and this is how I stayed in Oslo and learned how the Oslo as a city works and the dynamics of Oslo. So this is where we go into Fuglen. It really was me, it was Pepe, and it was Halvor. We created this ambience, and it became the hangout place of all the baristas. We were working with all the cool roasteries at the time. Tim, Supreme Roastwork, Soben Hansen, Kaffa, all of these great participants of specialty coffee in Oslo and Norway, representing that perspective. And this really caught off. It kind of exploded with interest of Fuglen because of our, I guess it was because of our approach and our personal engagement with our different topics. The unification of Fuglen became very strong, and to understand the dynamics of that, it was quite interesting, and to understand kind of both the attractivity and the potential of communication, and this became very apparent. So this was where we formulated the idea that we wanted to go to Tokyo. This is the 2 old ladies that used to run the shop for 37 years before we took over. But it was really about being genuine and understanding, wanting to do something cool in the market and create something new. So it really got a lot of attention, and in 2011, you see Kenji there in one of the articles together with me. He came over and joined our team. I went over to look at the building that he had found, and we decided to actually make Fuglen in Tokyo. It was more like an experiment than kind of maybe a smart business approach, but it really scaled up quickly. So we had Fuglen, the original shop, and then we created Fuglen Tokyo. And this was in 2011. We started a project. We opened in 2012. And at this time, I quit in Stockflits. But it was really interesting to see how we could engage in the Japanese market. I was very fascinated by the Japanese approach to market and the Japanese market culture, their orientation towards nature. We came from the Nordics, so we have a very strong orientation towards the society. And it's really kind of interesting to see that in dynamics. And also for the North American market culture, it's very human-centric, with the kind of understanding the individual So it's quite interesting to work with these different lenses in value creation. So we started Fuglin Tokyo. In 2014, we started Fuglin Coffee Roasters Tokyo. This is the new location in Nobelito. We had to expand. And in 2018, we opened Fuglin Asakusa. It's on the east side of Tokyo. And 2019, also 2018, beginning of 2019, we really got Fuglin Coffee Roasters in Oslo up and going. So this is our 5 venues now. It really scaled up, and it's all about kind of the downtown shop where you have the original Fuglin with the dynamics of this original building, and really taking that into consent and understanding it. And this is the team that we developed Fuglin Tokyo with, because it is really all about the people. It's me, Pepe, Halvor, and then Yazu, Yumi, and Kenji, which is still administrating the whole Japan operations. And it was really about taking the feel and the atmosphere and the sphere of Fuglin and bringing it into the streetscape of Tokyo. And the same with Fuglin Asakusa, which is a very interesting location. And we really work with it's all about quality to the people, really accessibility, open doors, open windows, and really make sure that you get this amazing quality of life, quality of cup of coffee in a very accessible way. So this is the different venues and how they look. And this is also the newest shop in Gamlebyen. This is special to me because I live next door. And this is also where we come into the understanding of city development. So we'll come back to that. It's really about building these atmospheres. Fuglin is about a very holistic approach of communication, understanding the values and representing something. So it's all down to the details and the materials, the quality of the coffee, the story behind, the people that is working there, and how they work in structure, and creating these accessible living spaces in the cities where people can find their homes, second to home, and they can really feel welcome. So this has been the whole quality of Fuglin in a sense. And this is very educational. And this is quite nicely summarized in this article from D2 magazine in Norway 2 years ago. It states the Fuglin perspective. And it's really brings in how we can see the world from kind of Fuglin, and what we've learned looking at the Japanese market culture with the Nordic perspective, and also looking at the Nordic market culture with the Japanese perspective, and also being allowed to work globally with coffee the coffee chain. And also we did quite an extensive mapping in New York. So we have done quite a few projects in New York, and we have not in any way put the plan of opening in New York to the end, but we simply had too much to do in Japan for the last decade. And it was really about kind of understanding the Japanese perspective of the nature and these elements that brought in the Fuglin perspective. But the perspective is quite interesting with Fuglin and coffee bars, and this is where you really understand the connectivity, right? Because it's really about the people, and all these people passing through Fuglin system, staying a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years like me. It's really interesting to be a part of something that's older than yourself and all of us. But it's really kind of nice to connect in that way that you do in a coffee bar. And this is where I come from. I stood on the floor myself for 5 years. And it's really, really all about understanding that it's about connecting people. And this is where the dynamics of anything happens. The market is simply people in its purest consent. It's just 8 billion people taking emotional choices on what they prefer and how they are engaged with. So it's really interesting to see how this works. This is from Oslo, but it's really important. And it's about connecting with these people, the producers. And that is kind of the core essence of the value chain of coffee. It is to understand local community to local community and all the impacts that's possible in that concept today. And that is where we really, I think that is why coffee is so educational, because it's so concrete, it's so tactile, it tastes amazing, and it's really a social beverage at the same time as it is a high quality natural product, and it travels the world. So it's really these connectivities and these coherencies is what got me engaged and understood into this factor, economy. So this is Fuglin explained in an Excel sheet. Of course, we work with numbers, right? This is me. I am an economist. Understanding all the dimensions of what we just saw in an economic perspective became what was kind of really wanted. I wanted to challenge myself on that and start to try to find descriptions where you could explain something economically that has much more value than just income and asset and costs. But this is the kind of, you see Fuglen Oslo, Fuglen Tokyo, the whole diversity of sales and cost drivers, and how we kind of really work with more and more complex structures of income. Because remember, there's 3 businesses in one here. It's vintage shop, it's cocktail bar, and it's coffee bar. It's a roastery. There's all kind of these income streams. And we saw that if you actually are a bit smart about how you use your store space, how you activate daytime, you activate nighttime, you add different elements of income streams or value chains into the system, you get more complex and resilient structures in the market. And many small incomes creates bigger incomes, and you get a more safe and sustainable business. And that is the model that made me believe that we could go to Japan, because I knew that I didn't speak a word Japanese, but I could speak economic. I could make this sheet, and I could make partners in Japan see the numbers. Economy is a numeric language, so you can really explain what you count. But then again, what do you count? So this is where we work, and this is just a small preview of what we're going to do in the second session, where we are going to broaden the perspective a little bit. It's about understanding the value chains and explaining this in an economic concept. This is what specialty coffee taught me. This is an excerpt of the value chain analysis of local society to local society that I was actually so lucky to be advising an employee, Norwegian Coffee Association, this winter on a full sustainable economic analysis of the value chains of coffee from a Norwegian perspective, together with both the industry and the specialty coffee associations. And really kind of where do we lose value and also maybe income or revenue, but where can we add impact of values? How can we support these elements? We need to be more and more aware of this. So this brings us off to the second structure. This is where this is what I bring with me from coffee into natural states. A new natural sustainable state of the city and a new natural and sustainable state of coffee. It is kind of interlinked. So it's really interesting. And then we have to look a little bit behind. After 10 years in just coffee, Fuglen, Stockfoods, all other places, I started expanding into testing these direct trade principles and transparency trade with other industries. For instance, the furniture industry of Norway, vintage furniture industry of Norway. We now built Norwegian icons, which was a concept where we took the notion of understanding the storytelling value and the historic value around a coffee farm. Could we implement that into a small producer of high quality, sustainably developed furniture, small scale producers in local communities of the Norwegian fjords? And yeah, it worked. So a lot of elements happen. And in 2015, I was given a choice. I was asked by the municipality of Norway, of Oslo, to make the Oslo region brand management strategy, because I've been working so much with the Norwegian brand in association with the Norwegian government. With Norwegian icons, they said, well, can you do some of the branding for Oslo as well? So I was asked to do a project an involvement process where I was going to take kind of the understanding of the global market structures and value chains and the branding value of Stockfoods and Fuglen. And brand is just identity, right? Identity in market and society for us humans. So value of identity development. And this is the identity of Oslo, because they saw that Oslo had a strong identity as a coffee city of the world. And they wanted to kind of get that into the strategic work. So for 1 year, I worked full time. And this is where I kind of started breaking a bit loose with Oslo as a place, working with place branding and place economy and place understanding. And we made a value filter based on what you experience of Oslo is what you kind of experience there. Fuglen, for instance, is an experience in Oslo, or now also Tokyo. So it's really about understanding the dynamics and the activity of the city, and then understanding the values and experience of what you experience. So connecting kind of the coffee and the streetscape into the actual holistic branding of a full city became quite interesting, and you really got the full overview and oversight on this. So this is where you have thoughtful value development with natural state. I formulated the strategy around this, and it's about understanding the natural value, the human value, and the societal value in the market and the value chains of the market in a holistic market sphere. So this is about approaching it with a kind of understanding of Nordic societal market culture and the Japanese nature perspective in the Shinto-based market culture, together with the global market structure as we all are part of. And it's really about approach. It's about understanding. It's about the principles of value creation, and it's understanding the dynamics on the value chains. So this is where we work with this structure. Thoughtful development by natural states. This was supposed to be in English, but I added the Norwegian slide, but that's fine. It's really about understanding the connectivity between natural resource, human resource, and the societal resource in a holistic market sphere. This is where we kind of move ahead. So this is my understanding, and I always start with the reference of Fuglen Coffee Roasters, Norwegian icons, and Stockfoods. It is bound with me how we can kind of really connect this into everything, because it's deep value chain understanding. And it's really interesting, and it's transparent, and specialty coffee has led the way. It really has made a new way of understanding the market on. And this is applicable for everything. So everything we do, if it's retrade projects, Oslo brand strategy, if it's a communal city development project or a social scape place, and here you see the roastery in context, it really doesn't matter. You can apply this on everything. So we use with sustainability, city-centered development, in Bergen, Trondheim, Asker, all over Norway, we've been now applying this. And we've been working with kind of all kinds of structure where we've been implementing the understanding of the experience in the city with kind of the value chain knowledge of coffee and transparency trade and direct trade. And we've been adding this into all factors. And this is where we start. A few years ago, I started understanding these descriptions, these different economic languages, because I've been working with Japanese economic language and the economic or market culture in Japan for several years. I've been working with the Nordic. I've been working with different aspects of global with the coffee value chain. I've been working with the US. And then I also saw that there was kind of different other languages. It's about circular economy, sharing economy, all of these factors. So I really went into understanding all the different explanations that they do. And that is different economic languages that describe different valuations. So I started working into circularity and a lot of elements. So we've been working as advisors to understand the broader scope of sustainability. And this is where you start implementing these things. So this is an example. This is, for instance, Mesh. This is one of the co-working spaces of Oslo that was founded in 2016, where you really started looking at sharing in the city, right? Sharing economy was just as important as fair trade, direct trade economy, and the whole kind of ethical work trade economy that we developed. And then you had sharing economy, you had all kinds of understandings of sharing resources. And circular economy is also another step in this direction. So there's tons of projects where we just really started working with understanding place and the potentials. And everything goes back to the meeting places and the coffee bars, because you really need to have them in the intersection of all these strategies. And it was really interesting to see this and research into what is the new trade, what is the new value development structures based on these new economic structures. So, and how do you interact these with, for instance, place and place economy? So this is tons of structures and references, which I've been working on the last 10 years. We've been approaching sustainable development. And we also been looking at all different economic understandings. So this is the Hive Economy, launched in 2019 by Harvard, where you really understand that the connectivity and the complexity of the market is about value and value description. And circular economy is one of the core ones. They could explain natural resource in the market in a good way and sustainable way. And it's really about collaboration abilities, replacing competition force as a driver. So all these factors comes into the different structures. And one of the projects we're working on now is to actually re-understand the Nordics in a transparent, sustainable-oriented market, where we work as strategists with Nordic Innovation to formulate a new Nordic market standard, where you really work on all factors of the vertical value chains and the horizontal market sectors, where you enable the value chains. So now everybody, the whole economy, World Business, World Economic Forum, World Business Council, they all are kind of acknowledging the same thing that we did in 2001, 2002, 2003. We, as the Specialty Coffee Association and in the specialty coffee industry, it's all about the value chains. So now everybody's starting to try to understand the value chains and explain the economy in a value chain perspective. And this really shakes everything. And it's really interesting to see how this formulates new economies. And then, of course, it's about place. It's about understanding the place of where these are happenings and the different market cultures. So we've defined a market sphere as something that is a value chain and value chain enablers in a vertical and horizontal factors, the verticals and the horizontals of the market, in addition to understand the context, where is this? How is it connected to other places? And that is culture and historical and natural context. And this is the regulatory, this is the governance, this is the social aspect of the market. And you really can explain it in these three factors. And that's when it becomes how these kind of structures create these elements. And this is the biggest project we're working on now. Collaboration is key to sustainability. It's quite simple. And it's about understanding the coherencies of all the value chains in the market. So this is massive. And then down to where we were and back to Fuglin. So this is our street where I live. And this is also where we've built the roastery. And the roastery is a part of a bigger project where we managed to buy a lot of old factories that was barren and car washes. And we've used the force of Fuglin, or the coffee bar and the roastery, and the cityscape production and the attractivity to now build and rebuild a whole closed part of the city. And we're building a working community-based and local. And one of the really essences of what we understood after COVID was exactly how important the local communities are. And it's again back to local society to local society. We didn't close our shop, we just made it into a deli shop. And we had a line of people all the way up the street. This on the right side, the building there, the big beautiful building, is a closed down old people's home. So it's empty, it's vacant still. And these other factors were just car washes and parking lots. And with the force of a coffee bar and kind of the approach of understanding, we've managed to build this community around it. And this also really shows the connectivity of these structures. So the sum of when I advise on city development and sustainable city development from the perspective of a coffee bar, it is really to understand that what is the feel of a city, the feel of city life. And we represent that in our coffee bars. As baristas, we meet all the people. What is the identity of a city? The identity of its city life. And what is the true value of a city? The sum of its city life. So it's really the most valuable thing you have. And people are understanding that. And content is key. So a smart approach to sustainable city life, find the meaningful value chains and value systems in the sustainable and dense urban economics. And content is key. And this is where we are. We are content. Specialty coffee is content, and understanding that. So content is key to city life. Content equals coffee. Human activity is attractivity, and we need to be working with understanding our position in that and taking the value of it out of that. But what is valuable and meaningful in the future, and what is quality of life and has value in the future? And this is where we really need to understand it. So we're going to have one more bridge before we go into the Coffee Association strategy that we did this summer, not this winter. But this is the manifest of Natural State. This is the manifest of the new company that I now have, which is quite simply, it's about understanding the new natural state of the market, where people have become aware. So I wrote this in 2017 at the origin when I kind of started this as my new project, and it just really sums up all the learnings from working with ethical, sustainable coffee trade for then 17 years or 16 years, and also being able and allowed to see this in the context of both Japan, city development, societal development, the Nordics, the US, and see this. And when you're at the street level, you really understand how things move. And when you are kind of meeting people in the coffee shops in Oslo or Tokyo or where you travel, that is where you pick up what is happening. And I could boldly state that within a few years, sustainability over time will replace growth as the market driver in the world. It will be the most important aspect of any sustainable value development, is that it's sustainable. It's not just growth. And that is a massive change. And then collaboration ability is replacing competition forces driver. Both of these factors is taken out from the specialty coffee understanding. And the world is changing with the increase in the awareness of sustainability. Awareness is key. This is what drives this naturally. It is really awareness that is now changing everything. And awareness is knowledge and understanding of coherencies in the value chains. And it's completely natural when you look back in the last 100 years. It's been globalized. Our world has been globalized. It's been urbanized. We live denser. But the really change maker is, of course, the digitalization. Digitally enabled transparency. The exact same thing as we disrupted the coffee industry with in the 2000s. It was internet. It was just 7 years old. I think it was 94. It became kind of publicly accessible. 2001, 2002, 2003 was really disruptive years of coffee industry because of digital enabled transparency. And this is all over the world now. And you see that. So transparency is key to sustainability. And it's really important to understand that the direct trade work that's been done, the Cup of Excellence programs, the way you've been working with the transparency as a role model in the coffee industry and specialty coffee, it's really educational on the rest of the world, on the rest of the market. And this is what kind of really makes me proud to come from this factor. I've never been educated. I just learned working practically with coffee. And I think that's something that is really strong with the Specialty Coffee Association, is this potential. Awareness in pictures, awareness of sustainability. Well, we of course have the awareness of the climate effect. It really pushes us. The COVID-19 disrupted the world. The inequality understanding and what's happened with the election and everything after has really driven awareness in a good way. We are more aware, and it's happening around us every time. And awareness of sustainability and sustainable economies, this is the interesting factor, because when people become aware and want to explain things, you start trying to put things in numbers. So in 2013, when we were approaching Japan, the Nordic model as a new economic supermodel was, or the next supermodel was presented as The Economist. Now it's old. Now we are really understanding the natural kind of how fragile the nature is, and nature becomes the new economic supermodel. This is what we are coming into the next 10 years, and coffee is a natural product, which is very fragile. And of course, words of unity with clarity, the new economic languages. So just before we jump into it, it is drivers of the market and society 2020-2030. It is awareness about coherencies and sustainability. It is collaboration abilities replacing competition force as a market driver. It's globalization in local context and local understanding in global context. It is digital disruption and physical flexibility. It is digitally enabled transparency and understanding of connectivities. It is urban value in rural context and evaluation of urban nature and city societies. And it's human resource and the full human valuation. And nature becomes valuable again. And this is where it really connects us with coffee again. And the regenerative and natural state of nature becomes the new economic supermodel. New value perspectives makes us formulate new economics to describe sustainable value development continuously. The new economic languages of sustainability. And how do they look? Well, they are here. We've been working with them for a long time. We all represent direct trade. We all represent digital economy. We all represent transparency trade, as Jen was introducing this very in the very beginning. And we are getting more and more about the carbon economy, the eco and the bioeconomy, the sharing economy, circular economy, which I mentioned, SDG economies as well. They're trying to now to implement SDGs into KPIs, and it's all about rethink economics. And one of the most interesting parts about working with Japan is that it's degrowth economy. The BNP is or the GDP has been in decline for 30 years, but they still have the most quality oriented. So it's about not quantity, but it's about quality of life. And then the urban economics. And this gets up. This was just 2 years ago, and now you have the goodwill economy, regenerative economies, culture economy, bioeconomy. Re-understanding the local economy has become so important after COVID, and really understanding how you need to have strong, resilient local societies, and you need to communicate between them. And of course, the Hive Economy project, which was kind of really showing the complexity of it all. So this is where we are. We're escaping with this. You have all kinds of different economic understandings that describe these economic new sustainable economies, and it's a plural. So what we are working with is to create some core values and define some clarity where we really just reorient towards ourselves with nature, human society, and market. These are the four spheres. And the market connects the three value spheres, defining the core value spheres of the market, making it to a market sphere, and defining augmented value chains, the transparent value systems between holistic value spheres as a neutral market structure. So the market is neutral. It's all about principle. It's all about how we approach value creation. If it's for instance, a solidaric value chain will be a value chain as an indirect trade where you only take out income if you create value. And this is, again, principles from direct trade from 20 years ago with specialty coffee. So again, it was the forefront. This is what we can now educate everybody else on. So it's really about understanding the complexity and what this is. So this is market sphere, it's city life, it's identity, it's brand, it's place, concept, or company. You can apply this to everything, and this is what we work with. So within these different value spheres is about understanding what is what and what values to count. So how important is the societal value sphere? That is innovation value, collaboration value, learning value. And the learning value of working in a coffee bar cannot be kind of evaluated in any monetary wise. This is tangible. So you can't count it. You need to just talk about it. And then, of course, the natural value sphere, it's circular value, environmental value, which is so important. And then, of course, the contextual value of where things are. But what we work with and what we represent is the most important. Humans are the market, and how we feel about things, is also based on how we identify them. And we always say that the most important value for an individual, for one single human being, is one's identity, is one's self-feel, always. And how you feel and how you are yourself is how you identify your surroundings. So the identity value gives relations value, and that gives emotional value. And if you look at completely natural disconnected markets like the financial market, the only value that actually drives the financial market for future value creation is trust. It's an emotion. It's a very fragile one. So this is really interesting to see how this is loosely connected, and it's all about what you evaluate. So value in market spheres, the bridge between value chains and revenue streams. This is where we come to the conclusion kind of how important this is. Identify your market and value spheres and augmented value chains, and define the income and cost streams as revenue and capital flows in classic economic format after. So this is value-oriented business development or market development. It's purpose-driven value structures. Because of these dynamics is changing, so we kind of foresighted this into the structure. And this is what we explained when we were delivering the strategy to the Norwegian Coffee Association this winter. It's about understanding dynamics of value transfer between society and market, between the local and global, between the urban and rural, again with the digital and physical. And it's understanding the kind of the change from quantity to quality, short-term to long-term, and meaningless growth, sustainable development. There's two very different approaches to this, because everybody is to develop values, but you don't need to grow without meaning. It's about understanding that you create quality instead of quantity and these factors. And this is also what we've done with Fuglin. And it's really about reconnecting humans and nature through the market and societal systems again. So values and qualities of the future is really quality and flexibility, relevance and meaning, and long-term sustainability. And for us, running coffee shops as well, accessibility, and most important, a sense of belonging. This is really what places are to give us as a structure. And this comes again back to the coffee bars. So this is really important to understand. And this was the basics, and this is the natural state perspective of how we advise companies and organizations and municipalities and city developers. And this is what we brought into kind of to make it a full circle this winter with NKI, eller Norsk Kaffeinformasjon, or Norwegian Coffee Association, where I was asked to support and advise in a sustainability strategy for the whole coffee industry. And we delivered this as a holistic sustainability strategy for the Norwegian coffee industry in what is potential within the new economies. And we're back to this picture. And I was given that assignment because I come from coffee. I grew up in coffee, and my perspective is from the street perspective of a coffee bar and the value chain of a coffee retailer. And this is where we looked at this. And we went really into understanding the dynamics of this and really analyzing the impact of all structure. We were working together with one of the big governmental institutions, Utviklingsfondet, which is working on farm sites and how kind of they are interpreting the SDGs into the food production. And they are identifying now the small farmers as the key to securing the equatorial forestscape, working together with these factors, for instance. And in this notion, I also worked with a very interesting startup that was also working with awareness of trees in coffee farms, Leaf Up. So they tried to start this awareness campaign, working with exactly how can you save the biotopes of the coffee farms. This is super crucial with climate effect and understanding the real impact of how we do it. And we need to collectively understand that if we don't do anything about the trees, and remember, in Japan, trees are holy. It's a part of their Shinto culture. And also, and I'm very kind of concerned about the trees and the coffee tree as well. This is pictures from the original last wild coffee biotop in Ethiopia. It's really about taking care of what we care about, because it is nature that coffee comes from. So it's really about understanding the natural connectivity between humans and humans in local society, on the producing side, local and regional, global, and then it's local society on the consuming side, and their connectivity to nature, the humans and nature, in a global and local context. So this is how we identified all the links from producer, processing, trading, the coffee production, coffee roasting, coffee trade, coffee consume, and coffee waste. And how can we bring things back to nature alongside the value chain? And how can we secure societal and human valuation in each link? And how can we, of course, work with transparency and direct trade in this structure? And what sustainable economies are applicable to this? It's bioeconomy, it's carbon economy, it's sharing economy, circular economy, local economy, direct trade, digital economy, transparency trade. All of them apply because the value chain of coffee is so complex. And that is why it's also so educational. And again, it comes back to understanding the mathematics and economies of this. And but it doesn't matter unless you're back to understanding that it's about these people and this natural understanding and context with these people and in this natural context of their local communities. And this is why it's so rewarding to work with this from this element. So sustainability, it's all about understanding the value chains of coffee, for instance, which value systems they form and what value it is meaningful to count. And that is where we are. It is about the human values, the natural values, and the societal values as a part of the market values. And that is where we work based on and hope for a new natural and sustainable state of the city and a new natural and sustainable state of coffee, with both the learnings and insights and perspectives from Fuglin and Natural State. And I think that was it, Jen. 10 minutes left for talking and conversation.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I have so many questions, and I've just gotten to note that we're allowed to run a little bit over by 5 minutes. So I'm going to give us 15 minutes, and I'm not even sure where we want to start. Just 1 second. Perfect. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that it was just the two of us on screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have known about Fuglin for a while, and I have always associated with that beautiful design ethos. It makes furniture buying in my household very difficult. But I didn't really appreciate the really robust framework underlying that, using that as a tool to sort of draw people in and to educate, and as another pillar of the business. And so I have so much appreciation for that and just understanding that better. But then as I literally could not write fast enough, because you've articulated so many things that I think we're all thinking about and talking about, and brought them together in a single place, and made it, all of a sudden I had words to use in places where I didn't before. So thank you too for that. The first question I want to start with is, you mentioned that you wanted to find ways to articulate value beyond sort of costs or income when you're thinking about that balance sheet. I'm wondering, I feel like you've probably found a way to do it, but do you quantitatively address that? Have you found ways to pull that into things, or is that just something that you identify and work with and understand as a business that maybe that's not going to show up on a balance sheet somewhere?
Exactly, it's the last. You have to qualify it and talk about it as something that is present, because it is non-tangible. It's not countable yet. But it doesn't mean that you should not talk about it, because when you don't talk about it, you lose it completely. So it's about identifying the values at a greater extent first. So we talked about actually a less accurate but more poetic and meaningful economic language, because sometimes it's too accurate. If you look at all the kind of value that is created in a meeting in a coffee bar about learning value, societal value, anything that happens there, transactions of kind of heat and air, there's so many transactions in the sphere of a coffee bar, but the only economical traceable transaction is those few dollars over the counter, right? Mm-hmm. So you really need to kind of observe and understand the augmented value perspective, and you need to kind of really define and agree and talk about what values are important to speak about in this business modeling. And then what is interesting when you do that, and if you force yourself to look at how does it impact natural value, societal value, and human value, at the same time as you're, of course, addressing the market value, we always find that we get more value streams, no income streams, revenue streams. We find more of them. We find more identifiable, actually countable money flows. So we are kind of advising companies to be more resilient, because you can have a small income stream here, you can have a small income stream here. The whole factor of Fuglen was the synergetic structure of nighttime, daytime, and lifestyle, which you addressed, and pulling each other in, right? And this is where we kind of saw, where I learned how you can actually apply this on everything. And it's all about your approach to value creation. So it's really important to identify them and start talking about them, and then you will see that more and more countables will appear on your Excel sheet.
Brilliant. And then, so I've got a stack of questions here from the audience, and so I'm going to try and maybe smush a couple of them together so that we have time to address them. This first question is, what were the difficulties you faced in opening a shop in a culture foreign to you? What adaptations did you make? How did you decide what to keep from your native culture and what to take from the adoptive culture? And I'd like to tack on another question to that, which is that you mentioned these different economic languages. And I am very mindful of the fact that there are quite a few, you guys have broken boundaries in so many ways. You were doing things that now I think many retail companies are looking to do, which is break into new markets. And so on top of that, sort of what of that economic language did you need to learn? And how do you learn to speak that new language and evaluate maybe new potential locations or cultures to work with? Sorry, it's a big, long one.
Yeah, that's two big questions, but
yeah.
It's the first thing you need to understand is that there is massive differences within each nation, which in each historic context, if it's the EU, it's the Nordics, or if it's Norway or Denmark or Sweden, or if it's us in the US, Canada, Ethiopia, Kenya, the market cultures are a result of historic societal development. And it's really interesting to see that there is a plurality. So you need to understand that there is tons of economic understandings. And that's kind of the first beauty to understand. And it's really about identifying the impact of the value chains in the context of where they are, and understand the most important market culture aspects of where you approach, like Japan. It's quality. Mm-hmm. It's integrity. It's kind of long-term perspectives. The most interesting part about Japan is the time perspective, the value of time. That is, we really have short time to save ourselves and our coffee industry and our beloved coffee trees around the world. Time is of the essence, and the time perspective. But it's two ways. It's the short-term activity and it's the long-term perspective. And Japan market culture has a very long-term perspective. It's like 1,000-year perspective. And that was really interesting to learn. And then, of course, Japan has a lot of other elements, but it's the quality, it's the long-term perspective, and it's the connection to nature. Japan is a Shinto-based market culture. It's a natural religion. It's the only natural religion or fully industrialized society in the world that's based on a natural religion. So that's quite interesting because it gives human a part of nature. While in the Nordic countries, we have the humans as a part of society, right? The collectiveness. It's quite similar as well. So it's really about understanding that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and we're part of a system, and we belong to these factors. So that is the core essence of what I brought with me from the Japanese perspective and the long-term perspectives of nature. What we brought with us was work-life balance, time again. How do you share the time of your day? We had the 5-day week, the 8-hour work days. We applied the Norwegian or the Nordic labor law, which is kind of very balanced with you're not allowed to work more than 8 hours. You're supposed to have 8 hours sleep in your 8 hours own time. All of these strange social democratic factors from the Nordic society, and of course the gender equalification, flat structures, all of these factors. So bringing these with us was quite interesting. And this is also why I'm really looking forward to the day that we can open a shop in the US as well, to kind of really just indulge and impose in the US market culture, which is very oriented towards the creative force of the individual, the human kind of really potential, and it's a lot of great elements. So we're kind of just really being in the very amazing role of being able to look at different qualities of different market cultures and try to pick the best ones, apply them to our business modeling.
I think that's, I mean, it makes sense. I would imagine it's quite difficult to, I mean, clearly you want to go for the best fits, but also there's a lot to consider and how they balance with each other. Have you ever found a situation where, you know, one aspect of a market culture has really resonated with you, but actually directly conflicts with one from a different one?
Yes, there's been a lot of lost in translations episodes. It's been quite intense several times, and we've there's a reason we had to kind of spend 10 years in Japan to really make it fly. I think things takes time, but you know, at the same time as we have a little time, we also need to acknowledge that things take time, and that's why we all need to work collectively fast together to make things move faster. But it's really there's tons of situations, so we need to have another meeting on that.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to switch gears for a second. We have a question here that is about vertical sustainability. How do you decide which coffee sources to work with long term, and how do you navigate the difficulties of importing through direct trade, with especially countries that do not have trade agreements with the country in which you operate?
Oh, that's a very sophisticated question as well. We work as direct as we can. That's a principle. So you need to work within the context of where you are. If it's Ethiopia or Kenya, it's quite different. Colombia or Brazil, it's again, market cultures are very often found in the regulatory structures of the market, right? Of the governance and the laws. So it's really about trying to how we work. We work trust-based and we work in dialogue. It's Björna that really works with the coffee trading itself and Fuglin. And we had Joachim before, and we've been working before we started working ourselves with Kenji, Björna, working as buyers. We also worked with kind of the people that we know and trust, Nordic Approach, Coffee Collaborative. So we work in association with. Again, we try to collaborate in the value chain. We try to really reach the direct as possible, and kind of establish trustworthy long-term relationships through the market systems. But it's really about presence and being able to keep the dialogue going and have the conversations, you know, and really get that into a good way.
All about the collaboration and the human connection.
Yeah, it's really all about the collaboration and the human connection.
Just, I think on a more final note, thinking about if somebody wanted to, I mean, there were a lot of economies discussed. There was a lot to sort of dig in there, and I know that I certainly wanted to sort of like just see some of these slides a little bit more and kind of dig into them a bit. So it might feel a little bit overwhelming for a retail business at the moment to sort of go, okay, but how can I apply this to my business? Do you have any advice in terms of what a business owner should be doing if they wanted to start digging into this a little bit more and thinking about the kinds of values that they can create or add, or these different streams, or just start thinking about these different economies through the lens of their own business? Any advice?
It's really just to start opening up and start asking questions and start kind of really investigating your own value chains. Understanding not only coffee, but anything. You just ask where things come from. Is it transparent? Transparency just reveals everything, doesn't it? So that's the form. So really just starting to ask questions, ask for how things are connecting, and how can you shorten them? How can you work with a bigger side on your side? How can you strengthen your business by working in the sustainable approach? And really finding the economic opportunities in the sustainable economy is the best way, because you can really increase the quality and the value of your business if you understand the new values of our time, which is the sustainable based ones.
Well, Einar, it has been such a pleasure, and I wish we had so much more time. I feel like I have so many more questions, but thank you so much for this presentation. Truly, it was just so great to have all of these things brought together and to understand sort of where all of these came from and to hear more about your journey. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. I'm very honored and I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, I think we are going to move on to our next session shortly. So if you have any other further questions, you can drop them in the chat. I don't know that we'll be able to sort of address them later, but don't forget, you can keep dropping those questions in. And of course, yeah, please just let us know you're here. We'd love to hear from you. All right, thank you so much.
Every story, every dream, every challenge has a beginning. Your journey into the coffee world starts now. Introducing the F18SB, Sanremo Coffee Machine's brand new creation, conceived and made to give you the perfect introduction into the world of coffee. Absolute thermal and pressure stability, completely redesigned interface, and outstanding usability that gives you a unique and original product in this market. Day after day, enjoy being able to always deliver the perfect coffee. F18SB, your journey into the coffee world starts now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Retail Summit. My name is Vicente Partida, and I'm the Community Experience Officer at the Specialty Coffee Association. I'm coming to you today from my home in London. Thank you very much for joining us for day 2 of Retail Summit. We're calling this session Future-Proofing Coffee Retail. We're going to be talking to Lindsay Harley about making decisions to provide for your business tomorrow. Lindsay is the founder and CEO of Modern Standard Coffee. Modern Standard is a specialty coffee roaster and retailer in the UK with a cafe in Edinburgh and a roastery in Lindsay's hometown of Glenrothes in Fife. You might know Lindsay from her background as a Q grader, UK Cup Tasters champion, barista competition judge, or as the former national coordinator of the SEA UK chapter. Today, Lindsay will share Modern Standard's journey from the decision to pull out of supermarket chain sales, coming home to Scotland, and partnering with Danish bakery chain Ole & Steen. Lindsay will share her story and give insights on how to take chances and approach future-proofing your retail coffee business. Lindsay, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for being with us.
Brilliant.
Okay, so we're going to hear from you, Lindsay, and I'm going to go away. I'll come back to chat with you after your presentation. Just a note for our audience, please send us your questions for Lindsay in the chat, which I think is on this side, or this side, one of these two sides, and I'll share them with Lindsay during our Q&A. Take it away.
Fabulous. Okay. Let's just move that screen over here. All right. So, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really hope somebody finds this somewhat useful. So, I've been asked to share my story. So, what I've tried to do here with coffee retail is to divide it into 3 slices and explain the pros and cons of each and how you can use these to future-proof your business. So the first one being cafe roastery. Now, obviously, we're not going to be touching upon any wholesale here, just the retail. But the first type of retail for me is the cafe, roastery cafe model. It's one of the most attractive models of retail to start with, and there's many reasons why. The first one being the fact you have a instant customer interaction. Customers can come in off the street, try your product the way that you want them to have it in the environment that you have created and the staff that you have trained. You're creating an experience in which you have a very high level of control, and if customers like it, they'll probably tell their friends and they'll come back. This model, though, does tend to be very labour intensive and also very heavy on capital expenditure. Fitting out a cafe roastery can vary from as little as £50,000 to $500,000. It really depends on your location and what you fit out your cafe with. Often, though, these models do lose a little bit of money at the beginning, but if you're in a brand building phase, you can often justify these losses. The second option is the most common one, which is roastery web shop. So you have a website, you've launched a business, and you have created a coffee brand that you feel fits a gap in the market, which, if exploited, will create a good return on your investment. In this model, unlike the roastery cafe, you have a slightly lower customer interaction because you have a website and not a shop front. But what you can do to get people on your website is things like paid adverts, PR, and search engine optimization, all the standard stuff we all know about. You also have a really high level of control over the customer experience. I mean, not as much as the cafe roastery, as you do everything but make the coffee. But you roast and you pack your coffee and you can control the customer experience really well. The labour isn't as intensive as the roastery cafe, and the capex can be zero if someone else roasts for you, or it can be a light to medium if you opt to purchase your equipment and rent a space. And this model often results in quite quick profitability if you hit enough customers to break even. And like I said, this is often the most common way people begin a coffee retail business. And the third type is through the supermarket or through a reseller. And supermarkets, depending on what country you're in, can have as little as 40 stores nationwide to 4,000. So their distribution is vast. And the majority of the public do their shopping here. So if you want to grow your brand quickly, this is a really good way to do it. However, listings with these supermarkets are notoriously tricky, and the buyers are very aggressive at pushing the price down so they get the best deal. But you've got a very low customer interaction here and minimal control over their experience. Labour is high because of the volume. And again, capital expenditure can be nothing if you have someone else roast, or light to medium if you decide to rent a space and buy your own equipment. So these are the three, in my opinion, simplified retail coffee models. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to business and business evolution. So like most businesses, it starts with one person. You have an idea, you think it's got a great chance of success. So you throw in your savings and you probably borrow some money from your family to get going. But the way that your business evolves often isn't the way that you plan. And I'm sure there's many a business owner who can attest to this. So as your business grows, you hire more people to support that growth. And I think it's really important that I mention this point now, is that there's different retail models fit businesses at different business stages. So you may start with a roastery cafe, and then in 15 years' time, you may add a retail line. So that might work for one business, but it might not work for another. So it's important to know your business, know your strengths and your weaknesses, work to your strengths and also strengthen your weaknesses. And also the business has to work for the founder. And I think this point is really often forgotten. You know, founders of businesses always put their business first. And at the beginning, the business tends to come first at all costs, but this is unsustainable and it's pretty unhealthy. Some businesses completely pivot. For example, I think Blue Bottle began wholesaling at the beginning as well as retailing, and then they made the decision several years ago to stop wholesale altogether. And the only place you could get a blue bottle coffee was in a blue bottle cafe. And then obviously they sold to Nestle a few years later for a crazy valuation. So I'm sure at that time, James, the founder of Blue Bottle, was making a future-proof decision for his business. So as the stage of the business grows, you have your second hire, and then you evolve into having multiple staff, layers of management, and there's also inevitably outside strings that are pulling on your business. And this can be anything from seed investors who are looking for a return on their investment to family members who've lent you some money, they thought perhaps for a couple of years, and they're wanting it back to do something with it. And as you're trying to build and keep your business going, you need to keep all these different parts in mind and how your business evolves and how to future-proof, knowing what impact they have. So I'm going to touch a little bit on my background because I think it's basically formed my decisions to date and also my experience. So in 2008, I finished studying at the University of Edinburgh, and at the time I was working as a barista. So for 4 years through uni, I worked as a barista in Edinburgh. Excuse the dog outside barking. And when I moved to London, there was no specialty coffee scene in Edinburgh to talk about. There was one in London, so luckily for me, I got to go down to Fernandez and Wells and be a barista there. I'm going to have to get someone to take that dog away, it's driving me mental. All right, that's dealt with. Yeah, so when I moved to London, my first job was with Fernandez and Wells, and at the time they were London's best cafe. And it was a great place to be because they were the first cafe in London to have a Sinesso Syncra. We served Monmouth coffee, and we're pulling 28-gram triple ristrettos. So it was a really great kind of place to be and learn about specialty coffee. But at the same time, they didn't pay more than minimum wage, and for anyone living in London on minimum wage, it doesn't quite work. So with that in mind, I decided to contact a bunch of different coffee roasters and say, hey, I'm good at making coffee. I want to make a career out of this, pretty hard working. I think I'm pretty smart and good at teaching people things. Do you have something? And the same day I had a response. I interviewed in the afternoon, and by I think close of play that day, I had a job offer. So that was 2009. And there wasn't a plethora of specialty coffee jobs. And I would have loved to have stayed in the industry. I'd love to have worked in specialty coffee, but there just wasn't a choice of jobs at that time in London. So I worked in a commercial coffee roaster. So they were called Drury. They were an Italian family coffee roasting business. And I think at the time, the decision I made to step into the commercial coffee sector was definitely the best one for me. You know, I was future-proofing my skills so I could further my career. Plus, the money that I was paid was more than the cafe, and I could put that back into investing in myself through visiting other cafes, entering competitions, and volunteering at coffee events. And in 2010, I was introduced by Dale Harris to a job that he was leaving. So he was leaving United Coffee, going to Has Been, and his job at United Coffee was trainer and an overall interesting person around specialty coffee. And he was tasked with finding someone who was a bit of a match. And he knew that I was at Drury and I did something similar. So with my background in commercial coffee with them and my interest in specialty, I fitted the bill. And it was at this point I was exposed to bigger customers, larger chains in the UK, and it became pretty obvious that there was more customers wanting specialty coffee. But unfortunately, large commercial coffee roasters, as much as they'd like to be able to do specialty coffee and they can purchase it and they can roast it, it's more than just doing that when you are a supplier. There's so much more around it. And at the time, we would take customers on coffee tours around London and show them what was possible, but yet it couldn't be delivered. So these customers couldn't go to small roasters because they didn't quite appreciate commercials and machines and servicing and that whole package that is really important for larger customers. But at the time, I could see the gap emerging. I could see the opportunity for a large, scalable specialty coffee roaster that could do machines and servicing. But I wasn't quite ready at that point. I had the idea, but I don't think I had the right skills, experience to really do a good job. So in 2013, I moved to Falcon, and in that position, I supported roaster clients with consulting, and I sold green to other roasters. And my involvement began with the SCA in 2010 when I was volunteering, judging, competing. As Vicente said, I was national coordinator for a couple of years. And so I became slightly more networked in the specialty coffee sector, and I could see the opportunity growing. But it wasn't until 2015 that I launched Modern Standard. And coincidentally, it was on March the 8th, which is International Women's Day. And I didn't know that until about 3 years later. So the idea, again, was to focus on the gap between big commercial and small specialty and kind of go for the middle. And after a few months, we launched into Sainsbury's. So we had 2 product lines. Basically, it was Sainsbury's, they had we went into 500 stores at the beginning with 2 lines, a whole bean line and a ground line. And it went so well that the following year, they asked us to add on 3 more lines, which we did. And I think it's worth saying then that we're also seeing a lot of the customers in Sainsbury's transition up from buying from Sainsbury's onto our web shop. So they would find us through Sainsbury's and they would transition to the web shop because they would see on the back of the packet, the website, they'd see we had a larger range, and they much preferred the customer experience that they were receiving on the web shop than from supermarkets. But like everything, your business begins to evolve, and at this time our wholesale was getting pretty strong, and we were sort of trying to figure out, were we retail, were we wholesale, were we both? But we had a vision in 2020. So back in 2019, we were planning the following year. And our lease with our warehouse was coming to the end of that year. And we knew we had to move. We needed to find something larger, something bigger, something that could help continue our growth. And when we started the business in 2015, we based it down in Tilbury, a little sort of town on the outskirts of London. And we couldn't sell locally because there was no local market. We couldn't sell locally to London because we weren't inside London. We tried to sell to Scottish companies, and as a Scottish person, I thought that'd be quite straightforward. But my accent was good, my address wasn't. So as a result of that, they decided that we weren't going to be a good supplier. So we had no luck. So we targeted mainly national chains rather than local businesses. But in 2020, we decided to move the roastery. And so in January 2020, we moved our roastery from Tilbury to my hometown in Fife. It's called Glenrothes. And my staff moved, which was fantastic. And at the same time, we decided to open up our first cafe. And for me, I learned to make coffee in Edinburgh. It was where my journey began. And so to have a cafe on the corner of where I used to live, between Bruntsfield and Tollcross, is where I used to live in Edinburgh near the university. A site came up on the corner, great spot. I thought this is meant to be. So we took it on and we opened our cafe at the end of 2020. So 2020 for us was quite a big year. We moved the roastery, coronavirus hit, and we all knew what that did. And we also opened a coffee shop. So quite a revolution for our business. But it also gave us the chance to think, is this what we want to do? Do we want to keep selling in supermarkets? And like I said before, I think it's really important. At different stages of your business, different retail path makes sense. And at this point, we had a great web shop, loads of customers coming on, finding us through Sainsbury's and staying with us on the web shop. We had a cafe that was selling more and more of our coffee, more subscriptions and all of that. And we made the decision to control our own retail and not let someone control it for us. So we said goodbye to Sainsbury's, and the only way we would sell our coffee was direct or through our cafe. So that was our 2020 transition. And so I think it's worth touching upon some facts, because I think a lot of people will be interested in what it did to our business and what going in and coming out of retail can do. So of course, our volume went down a little bit, but our gross and net profits went up, our flexibility increased, and ultimately the only thing that is the most important, in my opinion, was the customer experience went up. We had better customer service, we had better customer interaction, we had better customer reviews and more customer referrals. It took a few weeks for some customers to notice our absence, but once they did, we received tons of emails asking, was this a blip? Were we out completely? And when we explained our reasons why, 99% of those customers emailed back positively, and they began buying directly from us. So our bottom line hasn't changed. So the decision was financially positive and customer positive, which I think is the right thing. So why future-proof? And I think we all future-proof ourselves. For example, we try to eat healthy, we try to exercise, we try to sleep, we try to educate ourselves, we try to improve. And I think we're all trying to sort of make ourselves a better place for the future, both professionally and personally. And no one knows what will happen tomorrow. And I do think that 2020 taught us all a lesson in that regard. But future-proofing is critical, because as people, our requirements change and evolve. We go from being, on our own to being, in a relationship. And in my instance, beginning of the business, I had no children, now I have children. So my future-proofs, decisions are slightly different. And same in your business, you go from you to having more people, to having more customers, to more suppliers, more outside strings, perhaps investors. So you need to think of all these things and prepare yourself in your business for what could possibly happen next. So in future-proofing, in my opinion, there's two main ways to future-proof your business. One is to exit, which isn't a dirty word. I think most people who start businesses don't really think of what to do with them at the end. And again, what they will look like and each decision, impacts both on themselves and their business. So with an exit, it allows you the opportunity to enjoy the fruits of your labor. It allows you the chance to perhaps work for someone else for a while, let them take the leads and support them in their growth for their business, because your experience would be invaluable. And the other sort of way to sort of future-proof your business is to evolve. And so to make your business stronger and more robust, so you can ride out any future events. This might be opening more stores to hit that critical mass that can financially support a central administration structure to keep those stores operating. It might be adding more products, some NPD, some brewing equipment, and perhaps machines and servicing. And I know I said we wouldn't mention it, but wholesale. Most businesses do tend to eventually go from retail into wholesale to offset some risk. And because people might come into your cafe, love what you do, and think, I'd love to serve this in my restaurant or cafe or whatever. And that way you can utilize your equipment and your staff to earn more money. Now, how to future-proof? I think now that we've explained why, it would be helpful if I explained how. And I won't touch upon the evolution of your business. Again, only you know what's best, but in terms of exiting, I think this is probably a topic that I can talk a bit more about. So for those of you that don't know, 3 years after I founded Modern Standard, I sold half of it to a Danish bakery called Olenstein, who have about 90 odd shops in Copenhagen and Denmark. Now they've got about 13 shops in the UK and 2 or 3 in New York. This, in fact, was their future-proof strategy, as they made their own bread, baked their own cakes and pastries, but they had a coffee roaster partner in Denmark. And they saw that specialty coffee was such a growing market, very important in their future growth plans. So rather than buying a roaster, getting a consultant, having them help set up just a function within their business that would take green coffee, make it brown, They chose slightly more of an entrepreneurial route, where they would invest in a growing specialty coffee roaster, so they could benefit from their insight in return, could benefit them with their volume of coffee. And I think we'd both agree that they never really invested in Modern Standard. They invested in me and my business vision. And the relationship has been 100% positive. I often think, would I look back after I did the deal and think, oh, that was a bad idea, I should never have done it. I have never once regretted it. 100% has been the best decision that I've made, both for future-proofing Modern Standard and for myself. Again, I think you need to remember these businesses that we create, they have a huge impact on us as people. And I think we often have to remember the impact that that has. The partnership, again, has allowed me to work with some really smart, successful people who Olenstein is led at the moment by a guy called Jason Cotta before he was CEO of Costa, when they did their deal with Coke. So great guy, super knowledgeable, and happy to share his sort of experience with me, and I'm learning so much. Again, with the private equity backers, what they see as business opportunities, how they grow them, and all of this I find very, very interesting. So for me, I'm still on my journey with Modern Standard. The business continues to evolve and grow. We're looking to add more stores, increase our wholesale, and now that we have this base in Scotland and now my address and accent fit, we've had such an interest locally from businesses who want to work with us. So we're seeing that as a new strand of our future proof. I'd very much like to say thank you for having me on today. It's been a pleasure sharing my story. And if anybody would like to get in touch, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and just, we can continue the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you very much for sharing the story, your story, and the story of your business. We're going to get to our Q&A. Just as a reminder to our audience, if you have a question for Lindsay, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll share it. Lindsay, let me see if we're still sharing these slides. I don't know if we can take these off. Can we do this? There we go. Are you still with me? Have we lost Lindsay? There you are.
Can you? I don't know. My computer thought I was done.
You're not done. You're not done.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry, my clock's still running.
Yeah, you're back. Okay, so we're going to get to the Q&A. I've asked the audience to drop their questions for you in the chat, and so I'll read them out to you as they come in. I have a few questions of my own for you. When my colleague Julie, who's one of the producers for Retail Summit, asked me if I wanted to host a session with you, at first I have to be honest, I wasn't sure. I thought, I'm not sure that this is, I'm not an expert in this topic. But she told me what the angle was and sort of how you've made decisions for your business and for yourself and for your family. And I thought that story was really interesting. There's so many levels here, and I have lots of questions. I wasn't totally sure where to start, but I wanted to maybe take a step back, Lindsay, if it's okay with you, and give our audience, especially our audience who are watching from outside of the UK, some context on the significance of some of the business decisions that you've made, right? And so I was looking up some numbers. Sainsbury's, for those who don't know, founded in 1869. It's the second largest chain of supermarkets in the United Kingdom. It has 16% share of the supermarket sector. And as of 2019, has a total of 1,400 plus supermarkets and convenience shops, right? And Sainsbury's, as a reminder for everybody watching, is the supermarket chain that Lindsay partnered with in 2015. And the partnership that she ended in 2020. No, 2020. 2020. We were 5 years, So I found that particularly interesting. Olenstein, Danish bakery with about 100 branches, Denmark,
Yeah, I think in
England,
total over 100. Yeah, yeah,
Paris, New York, focused on high quality artisanal breads, cakes, pastries. Very different, very different. It seems almost maybe counterintuitive for an entrepreneur in the United Kingdom for somebody to start a partnership with Sainsbury's and then go,
yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I think at the time it was the right thing for us to do. You know, we were trying. I started the business because I seen the opportunity for scaled specialty, because everybody was so focused to be really small and niche. And you know, there's I mentioned this to you last night when we chatted that the majority of coffee roaster businesses are male owned, and you know they all, I think sometimes they tend to compete against each other, and I didn't really care. Like my focus is I wanted to kind of go forward and have fun and enjoy what I did. So I wanted to see where it went. And with specialty coffee, when I started in 2010, you know, I was so interested. I became national coordinator, and at the time I just wanted more people to be interested in specialty coffee. Like, we're all here, we all love the industry, we're all trying to grow it. And so we were all guilty, I think, early 2010, 2011, 2012, we're all trying to like make it smaller. We're all trying to like, oh, you drink coffee from Costa, what do you know? And I think there was a lot of that, a lot of shaming to people who weren't in our sector. And that generally kind of upset me, because it's quite, you know, we're trying to be inclusive, not exclusive. And I think one of the things I wanted to do was, you know, where would it be unusual to take specialty coffee? Well, of course, a supermarket. Nobody was doing. I mean, Waitrose, who are a smaller supermarket in the UK, did have specialty roasters, but Sainsbury's and Tesco didn't. And so we were like the first one to get listed. You know, we kind of, a lot of the roasters at the time in London were like, oh, why are they going to supermarkets for? And now the funny thing is they're all trying to get listed. So, you know, I'm not trying to say we started a trend. I don't think we did, but I think we definitely made it more normal and made it more kind of like acceptable. I don't really particularly care what people think. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but my aim in life and my professional career is just to spread more the love of specialty coffee to more people and get more people interested, because that is beneficial to everyone who works within this sector. It's not just to me and to you, but to everyone. We should all try and work together and not against each other. So yeah, I think, but then moving out, we then let someone else go in. But I think what Sainsbury's have done is they've put their own brand. They've kind of created their own specialty coffee range to kind of fit where we left. So yeah.
What did you learn about your customer during the time that you partnered with Sainsbury's?
They were keen to know more. Like, I think with coffee, we never know enough. None of us know everything, and we need to be open-minded. And when customers get into coffee, like they might start by having like a milk-based, like espresso beverage. Then they go into something stronger, maybe filter coffee, maybe espresso, maybe pour over. And they were just hungry for knowledge. And they were hungry to try other things and be part of it, because, you know, like there's less and less people drinking alcohol now. More and more people are going, you know, into like coffee and tea and soft beverages, and they just want to have something they're interested in. You know, I have many friends who, like, I'm sure we all in coffee have these friends who just text you on like WhatsApp or message and like, oh, so I bought this machine, how do I use it? And what coffee can I buy? And, you know, when I got going, I had loads of friends in Scotland who were starting cafes, and they'd ask me, who should I use? And I would tell them, use like Artisan Roast, or use a local roaster up in Scotland who can help you and give you the knowledge that you want, that you so desperately want, and get involved in the industry, volunteer at events, get into judging. Yeah, so I think everyone's hungry, and I think we've got a community, and we just need to keep it going. So yeah.
And coming back to your customer, though, there was a transition there from Sainsbury's to the web shop.
To the web shop, yeah.
Why?
I think everyone trades up, you know. I think it's like you get into something like the last couple of years, I've got into like photography more, and you trade up. You want to know more, you want to get the better equipment. The more money you have, the more time you have available, you kind of want to pursue those passions. So I think with coffee, people would try our coffee and it was markedly different to anything else on the shelf. Some people didn't like it. So not to say that everything, we didn't like wow everyone. We'd often get emails, oh, your coffee is not strong enough or something like that. But that's fine because there's a coffee for everyone. But we would often get people who would like it, want to know more, go on the website, see the larger range, and then buy a couple to try at home. So yeah, we had this, people just come in and they would just keep going. And so that's been great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was another question that I had for Julie, one of our producers, initially when we were talking about your talk. I wanted to understand why future proof. What is it? And so I had to look it up, and I wrote down the definition from the Cambridge Dictionary. So future proofing refers to the process of anticipating the future and developing methods of minimizing the effects or shocks and stresses, or the effects of shocks and stresses of future events. And I get the sense from speaking to you and from your presentation that when you think of future proofing your business, you weren't just making decisions for the business. It wasn't just about anticipating shocks and stresses in the market per se, but about prioritizing your plans, your personal plans for your future, the personal guiding the business. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, again, like I mentioned, many people begin businesses and they just put themselves second all the time. I've been guilty of it. Like many times the decision has been made, do I go on holiday or do I work? And work always comes first. Thankfully, my partner Hannah is very supportive, but I don't know for how much longer, because I think that many times I've missed family events or holidays or whatever, it's just getting a bit much. So no, you have to make decisions that benefit you, because if your business goes in one path and you go in another, eventually you have to exit. You have to get out, and you have to be fair to the people that work with you, and because they've joined your business and they've supported your growth, and if you just don't help support them, then that's kind of unfair. So also, when we moved the roastery from down south to Scotland, one of the things I sold to my guys was, you could all buy houses. You would never have had that chance down south. In London, we all know how crazy house prices are. Everyone's in that rental cycle. So I could say to them, like, move to Scotland, buy a house, future-proof yourself personally so you have the security. And now they're all buying houses. We've been there a year. They've all saved up their money. Scotland is obviously so much cheaper than London. There's more space. The air's nicer. There's loads of benefits. So for me, like I future-proofed the business because I think I thought, and I do still believe it was the right thing to do. We haven't lost any customers in London. They actually will all want to come and visit us in Scotland, so that's nice. And for my staff, they've now got roots. They've all got property. When they get older, they're going to be more secure financially. So for me, like, they've helped me grow my business, and I want to give back to them and help them, to secure themselves. So it's a personal and a business thing, and we must always forget that we must always remember both of those strands. So.
You said during your presentation, exit isn't a dirty word.
It isn't. No, I think this is the problem. People think, oh, look, she's sold, or he's sold, or they've sold, or you've taken investment. I think you've created a business and someone's liked it enough to give you money for it. Like, isn't that great? If you have a shop and people come in to buy your coffee, it's because they like what you've made. You don't want to have a shop that no one comes into, because that'd be really sad and your business wouldn't work. So yeah, many people, shame it. And I think that's wrong. Again, we've got people who want to come into our sector. We have people who are interested in what we are all obsessed about. And so for me, when I was approached, at first I was a bit like, oh, don't I? I've thought of everything. And then quickly it became quite an obvious answer. It was like, of course, they had the same vision. They don't bother me. I'm quite headstrong. Those that know me, I just get on with it. I don't tend to mess about. Things are very much black and white in my book. There really isn't a grey area. And so I crack on. I keep my business moving forward. I look after my staff, my customers, and my suppliers. And that means my partners are happy. I supply them with a great product. I give them my insight. I sometimes email them crazy ideas for marketing things because I'm quite a creative thinker. So they benefit from that too. I think they'd love to maybe be able to control me a little bit more, but I think they've learned to live with it. So it works well. We've got a good partnership. So yeah.
Right. So one big decision to leave the partnership with Sainsbury's, start Modern Standard's own web shop, and then on top of that, in 2020, and we're not going to delve into pandemic world, but
sure,
the same year as the pandemic, you decide, I'm going to move my roastery from near London to Scotland.
Yeah, 500 miles. I think
500
400.
miles.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that this came from an idea that your mom had. You said my mom had this crazy idea of moving the business back to Glenrothes. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think we must always remember our mothers are always right. I think we can all attest to that. So my mum I was talking to her about, I need more space, and my mum's interested in my business. Of course, every parent, wants the best for their children. And so I was sort of moaning, I just can't find enough space. Brexit had happened, all the warehouses were rented around where we were looking, and there was just nothing available. And if it was available, it was gone the same day. So she suggested, why don't you move it to Glenrothes? Because there was many big warehouses, there's not as much competition, and Scotland's lovely. And I think my mum was also trying to pull me back to Scotland. I've been away now for 13 years, and I think deep down she'd love it if I moved home. I haven't. I still live in London with Hannah and the kids, and I'm never probably going to move home. But yeah, it was her idea, and yeah, I thank her every day for suggesting it, because if she hadn't, I don't think I would have come up with it. Good old mum.
Thank you, Lindsay. Let's get to some of the questions here from the audience. Okay. So our first question: so many business founders think about future-proofing their business by looking for an exit strategy, but some really struggle to hand over the thing they created to a new partner. How did you find that process?
You have to let go. I think I get it. It's like having a child. You've created something and you love it, and you put yourself second to it. You put everything into it, and it's like someone taking it away. It pulls on your heartstrings, but you need to be able to compartmentalize that and just, it's a phase in your life. It's like going to school. You go, you get educated, and you leave. You leave it behind. It's a phase. So yeah, I know it's hard, and sometimes many businesses and the founder are kind of interlinked. They're very much the business, and I've always tried to not be that. I've always tried to, yes, obviously be linked to it, but not be it. So yeah, you just have to go to therapy. I don't know, but just try and sort of just take it as a lovely thing. It's nice. If someone wants to take your business on and forward, let them do it, and you can go off and do something else.
Mm-hmm. We don't have to talk specifics on numbers, but if you're comfortable,
yes.
What advice, or what can you share about, sort of the process of, what percentage Ollenstein would take of the company, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're 50-50, and I think again, our paths are now aligned, and that's great, because I do want to probably exit at some point. I get very jealous of friends of mine in the coffee sector saying they're changing jobs, and I think, that would be lovely to try something new, because it's but that's just decisions that I've made. But yeah, we're on a journey. They're looking to, I don't know, exit in a couple of years. They're owners anyway, and at that point, I think if they sell it, the new buyers have an option, but not a requirement to buy me out. So the new buyers might like that I'm the kind of minority partner in this coffee business they happen to have an interest in. They like the fact that I run it like it's my own. I still make decisions as if, again, I'm the CEO, I'm the person in charge. Buck stops with me. And I think it does work well. I think when businesses are often bought over, people try to remove the management, try to change that's what you've bought. You've not bought a business, you've bought the people. So yeah, I might get purchased out. I'll probably stay because I love it. I might go. I don't know what I'll do. But I think, yeah, it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, and life goes on. So
Great. We have another question here. This person says, hey, Lindsay, great presentation. I wanted to ask you a question, again, regarding future-proofing a company. You mentioned that you can either exit or evolve when future-proofing the company. In regards to evolving, how much of this evolving process is based on technology, hardware, software, etc.? Do they play a key role in the process?
Yeah, I think if you can automate as much as you can, of course, you can save yourself a lot of labor cost, and you make things so much more efficient. Yeah, I think every business now is trying to be better on their website, better on their, their sales process, better customer experience. Everybody wants things. Every customer wants you to be Amazon. They want to have the next day. They want to have everything like quickly and slick and tracking and everything. And I think, well, we're always not Amazon, but we're all trying to be better. So I think everyone's trying to be, better customer experience. So yeah, I think future-proofing would be just giving more to the customer than your competitor. And I think that's ultimately how you'll keep your business strong.
Thank you. We have another question here, going back to Sainsbury's. Were there any compromises that you had to make to have your coffee be accepted in a large supermarket chain?
Yes, many. So the funniest one was the bag size. So we all sell in in the UK anyway, 250 gram and kilos and whatever. And supermarkets are half a pound. So it's like 227 gram, which just seems so strange. The bags had to be a certain width. They couldn't be too wide because it's all about space on the shelf. Couldn't be too high. So they pretty much give you the space they want to give you, and you just have to make your bag fit. And that's why most of the bags are pretty much the same. In terms of other stuff, compromise, well, we didn't put a strength on our bag. So most coffees have strength 4, strength 5, and we didn't do that. And they were trying to get us to do that, but I was like, no, we're not trying to be commercial. We're trying to be specialty. So we stopped that. But those were the main ones. And again, we want you to put like a roasted on, which they said no, because that would confuse people. They might think that was the best before, even though it said roasted on next to the number. They assume people just don't read. So we had to do just best before. But towards the end, they were more happy to have both roasted on and best before. So yeah, there was a couple, but nothing too severe.
Lindsay, on a personal level, what has it been like for you? And I know you still live in London, but your business, your baby, or one of your babies, the business has come home. What has that been like for you?
It's been lovely. Like so I left an office at 18. I went to uni. I first of all went to Newcastle to do dentistry, which is quite ironic considering I got braces now. But then I went to Edinburgh and studied there. And then I went to London, and then I never thought I'd ever go home. And I would only visit.
Did you just say you studied theater?
Dentistry, dentist.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood that. Okay.
Yeah. I did 2 years medical school, because it's basically that's the first 2 years of dentistry. I didn't like it. Too much lectures, too much studying, not enough fun. So I changed and then went to do another course. But yeah, I left Glenrothes at 18, never ever thinking I would return, ever. I'd go home twice a year, visit my parents. They would more likely come to London to visit me. There was more things to do. But going home was lovely because, I could see my aunties, my uncles, my brother, his kids. I could see family. I could meet up with school friends that I hadn't seen. And it became this sort of really nice, quite nostalgic, because I think when I would go home, I thought, do I miss it and do I want to move home? But I would remind myself that I couldn't survive there. I think me and Glenrothes aren't a good fit in terms of what we want out of life. It's too slow. Things don't happen quick enough. London's got that energy. It has that vibe, But going home is lovely. And again, when the pandemic hit and, everything was a bit weird, I'd have all my aunties and uncles just pop up to the roastery and be like, hey, how's it going? I've brought you some cake because I'm bored, and here's some soup that I've made, and like it was nice. So I got to sort of be well looked after. And again, family always support you and they always help you. So having that around me was lovely. I don't think it would have been as fun not being there the last 18 months. So yeah,
right,
it was good.
So that's really interesting. What you just said makes me think that, for you personally, your living situation, London is more your
Yes.
style. Whereas for
Yes,
the
100%.
business, however, Glenrothes is the right place because you wanted to take the business in a different direction. It seems like that's what fit.
Yeah. Well, I think we could never sell locally. Like we were local to nobody down in Essex at all. Nobody was interested. My accent wasn't local. They didn't like that. And then in Scotland, our address was wrong. So by coming home, having the address and the accent, it just clicked, and all this interest became. And by that point, we were quite established. We have a nice, slick brand, kind of cool stuff going on, and many people wanted to be a part of that and take our learnings from London to Scotland. They wanted to understand what we could do to their business, because if you can make it in London, you can really make it many places. But most of our customers in London didn't really care where our roastery was, as long as we had the support mechanism to support them in London. Trainers, account management, service engineers, they were happy. They didn't really mind. And if they come and visit us, we can kind of spend some time together. Scotland's a lovely place. Fife has many nice little fishing villages and restaurants that we can have more of a nicer customer experience, rather than just going to a warehouse in like east of London and thinking, oh, this is okay, but what do you do after? We can make more of an event of it. But no, coming home was great. And yeah, I think customers have probably appreciated it as well, because we're happier, we're healthier, give them better service. It's all good.
What was the process of moving the process of moving the business from south to north? It makes me think of this may not be familiar. I wasn't familiar with this before I moved to the United Kingdom 7 years ago, but this sort of north-south divide. What part of was there an additional layer there for you in terms of making a sort of statement by saying, I don't have to be, my business doesn't have to be in the south to succeed. It can be up north as well. Was there some part of you that was thinking of that?
Yeah, yes and no. I left Edinburgh, there was no coffee scene. Like there was 2008, there wasn't a specialty coffee shop at all. And the time that I was away and I came back, quite a few had opened, a few roasteries, but it didn't feel very authentic. It felt quite kind of, not the word shallow is the wrong way of putting it, but there was so much knowledge in London, and London had exploded from 2008 to 2015 of coffee shops, roasteries and everything else. And I'd learned so much and been involved. Kind of coming back was my way of maybe just supporting Scotland and helping like my local neighbourhood with more employment, and trying to take what I've learned and benefit businesses up in Scotland. But yes, there is a north-south divide, but Vicente, you live in London, I live in London, we're not from London. London is a complete mix of so many different people, and you can learn so much therefore from that. But yet by going back, I wanted to kind of just take my learnings and utilize that in a place where there was potentially less competition and more opportunity. So
I saw that you were finally able to open. You have a cafe in Edinburgh, and you were finally able to open the cafe and be used in a way that it was meant to be used. What has that been like?
Yeah, so when we opened, we did 2 weeks of people could come in, and then the government changed rules, and you had to be served. It was takeaway only. Then a month later, it was just at the door. You couldn't even come into the premises. And so for the last couple of months, it's been nice to have people in and experience the coffee that we want to serve them. So we now have this huge amount of control over that customer experience. We've learned our trade, we've refined it, and then we've come to Edinburgh, and a lot of people thought we were quite new. They didn't think we had any history. They thought we were just a cafe. They had been quite aware of us, but a few people in Edinburgh had been by buying us online, finding us in Sainsbury's. So a lot of it kind of like clicked in their minds that we were a bit more established. But yeah, it's been great, and our customer interaction and our customer experience has just been, next level. And I honestly don't think we'll go back into retail on a supermarket level anyway. It's just way more fun not being in supermarkets.
Mm-hmm. You talked about controlling the customer experience there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's ultimately what we're doing, isn't it?
I have one more question. This one's from the audience. How was it like for you to grow into the various leadership roles? Did it come naturally to you, or was it a big learning curve?
I think I probably didn't realize I had all the skills available. I've got good skills in terms of being being an entrepreneur. I think some people find themselves just forced into it. It kind of happened. It just happened with me, and I don't mind kind of doing the dirty jobs or the difficult jobs or the timely jobs. I don't mind doing everything and nothing. But yeah, you have to evolve and improve yourself, and again, future-proof your skills. So yes, I'm very good with numbers. I'm great with finances. I get sales and marketing. I'm passionate about the coffee industry. I think that in itself sells. But yeah, I still had to learn more about tendering and sales pitches and all the stuff that makes your business slightly more kind of commercial focused. Whereas at the same time, teaching and passing on skills and experiences that I had to people who joined our business who wanted to work within coffee and coffee roasting and quality assurance and all of that. So yeah, I think I've done an okay job at most things, but I do try and obviously spend time improving myself and improving my knowledge, because that in turn benefits me and the business. So, but it hasn't been easy. You sometimes wish someone could come in and be like, "Oh, Lindsay, just take a holiday for the next 6 months. I've got this." But you often think to yourself, they'll never do it as well as you could because they don't work as hard. So, yeah, control freak.
Lindsay, thank you so much for your presentation and for the Q&A. It's been really great. Remind everybody, please, where they can find you, and if they can get in touch with you, where they can do that.
Yeah, of course, they're absolutely welcome. My email's on the website. You can get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, just any sort of social media. Yeah, I'll get back in touch when I've got some time. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thanks everybody for joining us for this session.
Excellent.
We'll kick off the next session in just a minute or so. So grab that second cup of coffee, and we'll see you back here shortly. Join us in the chat in the meantime. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Katie Vonderleith, and I'm a research program manager at the Specialty Coffee Association and the Coffee Science Foundation. I'm really pleased to be here with all of you today to share 5 key takeaways from the National Coffee Data Trends Specialty Coffee Breakout Report. I'm really excited to talk about this report because it is such a rich and unique source of high quality data about specialty coffee consumption in the United States. So in my presentation today, I'll share some highlights from this report, but really I'm only scratching the surface on what's available. So if you're at all interested in specialty coffee consumer trends, I would recommend downloading this report, available for free on the National Coffee Association's website. I also want to take a moment to note that this breakout report, as the name implies, is actually a subset of a larger study called the National Coffee Data Trends Report. This larger report is part of a series of consumer research studies conducted by the National Coffee Association of the United States since 1950. And the full report takes a deep dive into consumer trends in the United States, covering the entire spectrum of coffee from traditional to specialty, everything in between. And it also tracks consumer patterns and attitudes towards coffee since 1950, so for the past 71 years. This larger report, from which the Specialty Coffee Breakout Report stems, is available for purchase on the National Coffee Association's website. All right, so I'll take just a moment to talk about the methodology of this report. So 1,528 people were interviewed for this study. The survey participants were randomly selected from online panels, and the researchers took special care to make sure that the sample of 1,528 people was representative of the ethnic, age, geographic location, and gender dispersion of the United States. And so what that means is that because these researchers took extra care to make sure that the data that was collected in the sample was representative or similar proportionally to what is actually the diversity of the United States, is that we can take an extra layer of confidence in these results that we can extrapolate from the 1,528 people to the larger United States. All right, so let's get to the data. So the first takeaway for this report is that specialty coffee drinkers miss cafes and coffee shops. This takeaway, more so than others, is directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So survey takers were provided with a list of statements, and then they could say whether they agree or disagree with those statements. And in particular, exclusively specialty coffee drinkers demonstrated that they missed specialty coffee cafes. They missed the social aspect of out-of-home coffee. 53% of folks said that. 52% of people, of exclusive specialty coffee drinkers, said that they miss going to coffee shops. 51% of coffee drinkers said that they miss specialty coffee out of home. And 39% tried to make their usual out-of-home coffee at home, but it's just not the same. And then finally, 28% of specialty coffee drinkers said that they're finding it difficult to get the coffee products that they want in stores. So though we can clearly see that specialty coffee drinkers are missing the in-person experience of drinking coffee, from the next slide, we can see that they also don't expect the cafe experience to be exactly the same as it was before the COVID-19 pandemic. So actually both exclusively traditional coffee drinkers and exclusively specialty coffee drinkers are both interested in, proportions of those folks are interested in seeing increased sanitation and care taken towards disease prevention, and making sure that the cafe owners and all of these spaces are making efforts to decrease the incidence of disease. So for example, if workers are handling my food, are wearing gloves and masks, that would increase the likelihood of visitation. Having customers wear masks, following sanitization protocols. And so again, though we're seeing that specialty coffee consumers want to go back into coffee shops, we're also seeing that there are some measures that retailers can take to make it a more comfortable experience for some of these specialty and non-specialty coffee drinkers. The second key takeaway is cold coffee is a key category. So those of you who have been following consumer trends in the United States know that cold coffee has been gaining popularity for the past decade or so. And what we're finding in this study is that cold coffee is definitely a trend that is here to stay. So looking at this chart, you can see that there are 3 different types of specialty coffee drinkers. You have all specialty coffee drinkers on the left, on the top, exclusive specialty coffee drinkers, so those who only drink specialty coffee and never drink traditional coffee. And then you have the dual users who drink both specialty coffee and traditional coffee. On the left-hand side on this column here, you have percent of past day consumption. So this is at the time of interview, if folks had drunk this coffee the day before being interviewed, and that's how they fit into this category. So I think that what is really interesting about this chart is that if you look at the dual users and you go down to non-espresso based beverages, and you see that 46% that is circled, what that means is that 46% of dual users, so those who drink specialty coffee and traditional coffee, or those who drink specialty coffee and traditional coffee, 46% of those people at the time of being interviewed had drunk a frozen blended coffee, a cold brew coffee, or a nitro coffee. So that's almost 50% of that particular group. For exclusive specialty drinkers, it was 33%, and for all specialty drinkers, it was 35%. And I think that these statistics are super interesting in their own right, but also the fact that this survey data was collected in January of 2021, which in the United States is the dead of winter, so probably some of the coldest months on average for a lot of regions in the United States. And still we're seeing anywhere from a third to almost half of specialty coffee drinkers drinking these cold beverages. So that is quite an interesting and trend, and this data leads me to believe that cold coffee is definitely here to stay. Now is also a good moment to say that this National Coffee Data Trends report that I was talking about earlier, the full report from which this specialty coffee report, breakout report stems, they've been doing it annually for the past 70 years. But starting this year, they're going to start doing it twice a year. And one of the main reasons for that is to capture this the seasonal trend of coffee consumption. So having a hot season, the summer months, and then having the winter months, and trying to see how coffee temperature consumption might vary across those different time periods. Another point of data that supports the idea that cold coffee is definitely here to stay is that non-espresso based beverages, so these cold beverages, frozen blended coffee, cold brew coffee, and nitro coffee, were some of the more resilient sectors in the specialty coffee category. So this series of bar charts shows consumption data for various types of drinks from 2017 to January 2021. And you can see that specialty coffee beverages have sort of softened a little bit from 41% to 36%, but when you look specifically at non-espresso based beverages, which again includes frozen blended coffee, cold brew coffee, and nitro coffee, we're seeing that though they don't make up a huge percentage of the specialty coffee consumption, they've shown to be more resilient, especially during the pandemic. Looking at non-espresso based beverages specifically, you can see that there was a little dip in January 2021, but overall, as compared to prior years, there's still growth in this category. So another data point that supports the idea that cold coffee is definitely here to stay. So for the third takeaway, I've called it embracing experimentation. So looking at this chart, you can see that It's comparing exclusively specialty coffee drinkers in green to exclusively traditional coffee drinkers in the tan color. So in some of the key takeaways, we'll see that specialty coffee consumers and traditional coffee consumers are sort of similar in their consumption patterns and their attitudes and preferences towards coffee. But this is one of the areas where there's actually a pretty big divide between these two groups. So this question asks about new types of coffee tried since the pandemic began. And we can see on the right-hand side that 38% of specialty coffee drinkers did not try a new type of coffee, which is to say that 62% of specialty coffee drinkers did try a new type of coffee. And so that's pretty impressive to me. And it's also interesting to note that it wasn't one particular kind of coffee. 12% of specialty coffee drinkers tried ground coffee, some tried single serve, instant coffee, maybe related to the Dalgona trend, cold brew coffee, whole bean coffee, espresso capsules. So we see across a variety of different types of coffees that folks in the specialty coffee community are interested in experimenting with these different kinds of coffees. They're very engaged with their consumption of coffee. On the flip side, we see pretty much the mirror image with traditional coffee drinkers. 67% of traditional coffee drinkers did not try a new type of coffee, which makes sense. They might have different drivers for drinking coffee, though it is interesting to note that still 33% of those traditional coffee drinkers tried a new type of coffee during the pandemic. And so what I think this means for retailers, at least in the United States, is that it sort of provides some data and some extra confidence for those who would like to try different types of drinks in their cafes. So in addition to having your sort of classic coffees, your lattes, your black coffees, it is clear that specialty coffee consumers are interested in trying new things. And so if retailers can tap into that interest and provide new different types of coffees, maybe cold coffees, as we've seen that those are interesting, and data shows that those are particularly drunk out of the home, that might be an advantage that retailers can take advantage of. All right, so I've saved my favorite two takeaways for last. Takeaway 4 is roast, then sustainability, drive purchase intent. This takeaway was a little bit hard to make concise, but you'll see what I mean in just a second. So this chart shows different claims or different pieces of information that could be provided on a hypothetical bag of coffee. And the question to participants was, if this claim or if this piece of information was added to a hypothetical bag of coffee, if you would be less likely or more likely to buy that coffee. And so what we can see here is that exclusively specialty coffee drinkers, you see all the red, the different letters and the circles. What that means is that for all of these claims, pretty much, 90% of them, is that specialty coffee drinkers are really engaged and interested in having more information about their coffee. And actually across the board for exclusive traditional drinkers, exclusively specialty drinkers, and even dual drinkers, the level of roast specified was the number one piece of information that would increase their likelihood to buy the coffee. But then what I found even more interesting is that the next couple of pieces of information were all related to sustainability, in particular economic sustainability, but also some environmental sustainability. So the second most common, or the second claim that would most likely increase consumers' willingness or intent to purchase a coffee was fair price paid to farmer, followed by grown on farms that treat workers well, followed by grown in an environmentally sustainable way, and then the company supports the communities in which the coffee is produced, and then we have grind size, the grind is specified. So you can see that exclusively specialty coffee drinkers are particularly interested in these different pieces of information, but also they're not that far off from either exclusively traditional coffee drinkers or dual coffee users. And so for coffee retailers, I think what this information means is that sometimes in the specialty coffee community, there's a refrain that is said that is, it only matters what's in the cup. It's what's in the cup that matters. And that is true. We're seeing that roast is important to most consumers. We're seeing that grind size is important to most consumers, but we're also seeing that these extrinsic factors, these sort of attributes about how the coffee was produced rather than what it tastes like, are also super important to consumers, especially exclusively specialty coffee consumers. All right, so the final takeaway number 5, is called defying the stereotype. So a little bit of background information. In the United States, there is a stereotype that is held by some, but not all, people in the specialty coffee community. And of course, I'm making sweeping generalizations, but that's sort of what a stereotype is. So the stereotype is of a specialty coffee consumer. We would tend to assume that they are Caucasian or white, that they have a higher level of income, and that they drink their coffee black without milk, without half and half, without sugar, and without any added flavor. And they're probably drinking a light roast or a medium roast coffee. So that is sort of the stereotypical way that I think many people in the coffee, specialty coffee community in the United States would imagine a coffee drinker. And when we asked consumers in the United States, did you drink a coffee beverage made from specialty or gourmet coffee beans, we actually find that the specialty coffee consumer profiled from this survey is actually very different than the stereotype that I think a lot of folks have in their mind. So first of all, in terms of the actual coffee itself, we see that specialty coffee drinkers are more likely to use dark roasts, they're more likely to flavor their coffees, and they're more likely to sweeten their coffees. So this definitely flies in the face of the stereotype that I think most people hold. Additionally, we're seeing that Hispanic Americans and Asian Americans are actually some of the most prevalent, the strongest drinkers of specialty coffee, followed by Caucasians and then by African Americans. And in particular, Hispanic Americans' consumption of espresso-based beverages is driving their high rate of specialty coffee consumption. Another important point to take into account is that there's not a clear line necessarily between exclusively specialty coffee drinkers and traditional coffee drinkers. There's also this dual coffee drinker, and in fact, that category of folks who drink both specialty and traditional coffee, they drink a lot of coffee. They drink almost 2 more cups of coffee than specialty coffee consumers or traditional coffee consumers. So what that indicates is that there's not a clear line between these different groups, that we can think of coffee consumption on a spectrum of specialty to non-specialty. All right, everyone. So just to recap, the 5 key takeaways from the National Coffee Data Trends Study, the Specialty Coffee Breakout Report, were 1, that specialty coffee drinkers miss cafes and they miss coffee shops. 2 was that cold coffee is a key category. 3 was embracing experimentation. 4 was that roast and then sustainability are important drivers of purchase intent. And then takeaway 5 was that specialty coffee drinkers defy the stereotype. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have any questions about this presentation or about the report generally or about consumer coffee research generally, I would love to hear from you. My email is kdv@sca.coffee. Thank you so much.
Every story, every dream, every challenge has a beginning. Your journey into the coffee world starts now. Introducing the F18SB, San Remo Coffee Machine's brand new creation, conceived and made to give you the perfect introduction into the world of coffee. Absolute thermal and pressure stability, completely redesigned interface, and outstanding usability that gives you a unique and original product in this market. Day after day, enjoy being able to always deliver the perfect coffee. F18SB, your journey into the coffee world starts now. Every story, every dream, every challenge has a beginning. Your journey into the coffee world starts now. Introducing the F18SB, San Remo Coffee Machine's brand new creation, conceived and made to give you the perfect introduction into the world of coffee. Absolute thermal and pressure stability, completely redesigned interface, and outstanding usability that gives you a unique and original product in this market. Day after day, enjoy being able to always deliver the perfect coffee. F18SB, your journey into the coffee world starts now.
Thank you again for joining us for the Coffee Retail Summit. I'm Yanis Apostolopoulos, and I'm the CEO for the Specialty Coffee Association. I'm in Wise Cup Roastery, and next to me is George Lucas. We're both fully vaccinated, so we're going to remove our masks, and it's actually great to be able to be with friends from the coffee industry again. The next talk is titled All Day Store, Utilizing Training and Hospitality to Create Retail Experiences. And it is a pleasure to have George to talk about how he balances commitment to hospitality and superbly trained staff, as well as a menu that proudly features coffee, wine, food, and bar, open for more than the usual 8 hours a day. George is an entrepreneur. Originally from Washington, D.C., he has been working in the coffee since he was 18. In 2014, he opened a warehouse in Athens, which has today expanded to 3 retail locations. In 2016, George started Wise Cup Coffee Roasters that is hosting this session here today. And just this year in February, he opened What the Food, a takeaway store that features burger, pasta, pizza, and of course, coffee. George isn't joking when he says he's an entrepreneur. And I'm so glad he could join us today. So George, welcome.
Hello, Yanis, and welcome to Wise Cup. I'm more than proud, I'm more honored to be here today. So, as a matter of fact, we thank you all for this amazing opportunity. Hello to you all too. So, I was asked to have a small presentation of what warehouse is all about and how can food can be how can coffee team up with food and wine. So we own 3 distinct stores called Warehouse, and as you can see, each one has a distinctive marking on the side of it. Each tree can follow the same architecture, but with significant changes in order to have a significant appearance in relation to what they serve. So in Warehouse Specialty Blends, we have a vast array of wines and a very intriguing menu, which we can call fusion Mediterranean, and of course, coffee. In the second one, we call it Warehouse CO2, which is our bubbly store. It's a unique store that operates with champagne, operates with wines and only cold dishes that can accompany the champagnes. Our third one, it's called Warehouse Edge. It's our, as I can say, the more restaurant of our stores, because the food menu there is much more relative to high-end food servings. We also serve cocktails and various spirits, and we also generate each year our own signature drink lists. As Yanis told, till 2016, we opened up Wise Cup Coffee Roasters. It is our answer to what we consider as good coffee. We can have we can serve and we can provide every aspect of coffee to our customers and to our own stores. Our trainer and quality controller is a former world champion named Chris Lukakis. Chris, coming in. See, it's here. That guy is here.
Hello, guys.
And we are very happy to have him here since September, isn't it?
Yep, That's right.
All right. So Chris takes care of our training and quality programs, and there are things yet to come. Thank you. We're taking places to coffee competitions, and we ran up third twice. Last one was on 2020 with Mr. George Aguilakis in Coffee and Good Spirits. And our newest addition is What the Food, which is our handmade pizza, pasta, and burger. And it's gonna be our franchise and takeaway solution because the pandemic forced us to find some other solutions providing coffee and food. These are some of our menus. We also are the sole distributors for Greece and Cyprus when it comes to Loveramex. And one of our main main attributes is that we consulting other companies how to make their menus. We train them, and of course provide them with all of our range of products. So Yanni's favorite is it's the numbers, as you know. So in total, in our total income, we have 50% revenue coming from wine and spirits, 30% from fruit, and 20% from coffee regarding warehouse stores. And the reason that we came up with all this thing and we managed to come across it is our team. We give a lot of care and love to our team, and we're more than a family than co-workers. Here you can see all 4 partners in warehouse. The gentleman in your far right is our chef. Next one with a name Vasilis. Next one with a white shirt, Anastasis, which is the head of spirits. Right left from him is George, the financial guy, and the one that makes things running, and of course myself. So Yannis, where are you?
So thank you, George. So thank you for the presentation. Let's talk about the shops. Like, you have these shops for how many years now? And you have been trying to expand between coffee, food, wine, spirits like cocktails. And you practically operate from 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning until...
No, it's not that early. We open up our shops on daily basis on 8:30 in the morning. So we start serving our products around 9:10, and we go straight up, except the pandemic our conditions, to 2:30 to 3 o'clock after midnight.
Okay, so you're dealing with that on a daily basis.
Yep.
Now, how your turnover has helped you in expanding. So you went with an aggressive plan in expanding in retail stores and restaurants and opening up like warehouse CO2 with the sparkling wines and champagne bar. So how all this kind of offering is helping the expansion of the company? Like, what is the necessary, I would say, capital that you put to expand? Like, does it drain cash? Does it help with cash flow? Like, how does this work?
What really happened is that we enjoyed a big support from our customers throughout these years since our first store, Warehouse Specialty Blends, opened up on the 8th of January 2014. So we have 7 years of constant growth. So our client base gave us a big support and an ongoing support, even though in difficult times, because till 2015 we had a big financial crisis, as a lot of other European countries, and then we had the COVID last 2 years, 1.5 or 2. So we can say that we had a very, very big growth but we couldn't have done that unless it was for our supporters and our customers to come every day and trust us in what we serve them.
Okay. So let me rephrase a bit the question. So we're sitting today in the restaurant.
Yeah.
And coffee is where it all started from. Like it started from the idea of coffee, like getting a coffee shop and maybe some wine and just a bit of food. Because I've been on the first store that has a very small kitchen, and you were trying to build that. So today you have like an extensive coffee menu. You have an extensive wine menu. You have an extensive cocktails and spirits menu. And you have also an extensive coffee menu. So does the other business, we have a question here, actually dilutes from the coffee experience your consumers?
Not exactly, because in our terms, in Greek mentality, all-day stores can serve different types of servings and different types of products through certain time periods within the day. So we can concentrate our efforts and our attention to this specific kind, like coffee or food or wine, many times all together. And it's accustomed to our Greek mentality to have it all at once. So it's not dilute from the coffee or the food or the wine, because each product can be a supplemental to the next one. The initial idea came that we try to combine wine and coffee because it share how can I say, it share unique ideas like the terroir, like the altitude, like the procedures distinctively in each product. So we tend to consider that wine and coffee are like cousins.
Okay.
So
it's okay with the offering. How about staff? You're talking about a team, about training, about offering hospitality, like the skills that you need to run a shop all day. It starts from kitchen, it starts from like bartenders, from baristas, like what is I would say, how difficult is it to actually recruit, train, and retain staff on an all-day shop? Like,
yeah. First of all, we give great attention when it comes to hospitality matters. I think that everything can be served, or even it's good or bad, but unless you have a very polite staff and the hospitality sense be that big, everything can be achieved by that. So it's our sole idea to have good service, hospitable people, and polite, and then all the other things. On the other hand, we tend to, how can I say, we tend to generate our own stuff. We train them from zero basis, and we ask from them just to be very, very accepting, if I may use the term, to ideas like good energy and smile. So whenever you take people that they do not have previous experience, may say, you give them the opportunity to grow within the terms of our stores and grasp on their mentality. So this, I think, is the big secret of Warehouse, that the people generate themselves through the shops.
and is it difficult to retain people that you train from scratch? Because usually when people get skills, they look like what I can do next. And so how difficult is, like, over the years that you have been operating to maintain a certain level of staff and keep the experience or retain staff, or how quick is your turnover on staff?
As always, HR issues tend to be a critical point of our everyday work. But we're very proud and very happy to have the core of our team are with us for about from 4 to 7 years. So we right now have about 48 employees. So let's say 65 to 70% of those are with us above 4 years. So that means that we create a group, we create a team that has the initiatives and the perspective to grow and to vast their knowledge, or even come with us in what we make on the future terms.
Okay, I get that. So it's all about hospitality. It's all about having fun, and that means it's all about an experience where people are coming to your stores. And it starts from the morning to coffees to food to wine. The question that I have for you is like, how do you make sure that for every new location that you're opening, which is not like a replica of the previous one, like we heard, one has coffee, wine, and food. You open the second one, which has sparkling wines and cold plates and coffee, but it's different. Then we heard about the third one, which is like a new venture of yours, which is like just food and coffee, and it's just delivery. We heard about the roastery. So you are expanding, but you're not replicating the same model. So, but you're always trying to give the experience element. That's what I understood. Mm-hmm. How do you accomplish that? How do you get to a mode that everybody understands? Okay, it's all about the experience, and the feeling of the experience is the same, while the product is not the same.
The basic of the experience is to be hospitable. As for the rest, we have a core unit, if I may use the terms. We have a core unit that hops over to different stores, and we're taking the new kids, our new employees, and starting. We give them the general knowledge about wines, coffee, drinks, etc., and then we specialize them in each store separately. So all of our team has the knowledge of all stores and their attributes. Of course, each store has its own core, it has its own barista, so we can maintain to have a familiar face for its store base, and then what we do is to train separately people to separate aspects, like the CO2 warehouse, which is our champagne store. Their main employees are distinctly trained to champagnes, let's say.
So, okay, we got the understanding. Okay, it's hospitality, it's experience. The product can differentiate based on the needs. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you something else. Like, how do you pick locations? Like, you're expanding in different things, and I know, being from Greece, being from Athens, that you have locations by the sea. You have in the city center, in an area that it's not the most, I would say, iconic for food businesses. It's like kind of on the periphery. You have a roastery at the city center. You have like the sparkling wine, where the touristic area or the touristic heart of Athens beats. So how do you pick locations based on that mentality of hospitality?
I think that except from the roastery, all other locations came a little bit likely towards us. I mean, we opened up our first warehouse in a urban area called Exarchia, which at the time was in the middle of the turmoil, of the political turmoil and the financial crisis. But we never get a thought that we are not following the location model. We give a big effort to build destinations, because we think that our recipe can give something different, and we're just trying to support it with value for money products, and above all, our mentality. The location by the sea that you mentioned just came to us straightly. It was an acquaintance of ours gave us the hint, and we went there and opened it up. I mean, we just like the place, we just visualize it, and then we go and open it. We give very, very big perspective to our products.
So, if I may ask, like, I get it. What would be interesting, I guess, from our audience here is that you're describing a model which is kind of an unorthodox model to grow.
Of course.
What does it mean when it comes to investment, to capital? Like, how do you actually fund this? What has been the struggles? Like, you started from day zero with a SOP, and now unless you told me that I had like a big bank account and I personally financed it, like, which I know that you didn't. Like, what was the journey to get support, investors, to help you with that?
For starters, we need to understand that our first attempt happened when the financial crisis in Greece was in its highest peak. So we didn't have any, let's say, chance to evaluate all side information, like the location, like the customer's pool. So we found a place, we made it happen, and we start working on our own, endless hours for about 2.5 years. It was two guys in the service and us four behind every post. Me in coffee, George in the wine, Vasilis in the food, and Anastasis in the spirit sector. So and we done everything on our own capacity. I mean, let's say, George, my partner, must forgive me about me saying that. We never held money for ourselves, but we just reinvest our earnings to make a new one, because we want to maintain our creativity high, and the one led to another. So it's not an investing or lend or loaning money, borrowing money. No, it was earnings to the next, to the next, to the next. That's it.
So you started from scratch, from just one brand. You created multiple brands and orbit brands around that. And the question that I have is like, how does the customer follow you with a complicated brand identity? Like, does the customer follow the brand, or the customer follow you, the people? Like you, George, like Anastasis, like the people that actually created the brand and not the brand itself.
As it seems, nowadays customers tend to pick their own choosing about which store they're gonna visit according to what they want to have. Like, let's say in Warehouse Edge, which is our near to the sea store, has a new age wine menu and more high-end food. And so if our customers want to feel that, they're going there. If they need to have a much more comfort, they're coming to our first store, which is Warehouse Specialty Projects. And if they want some more, let's say, elevated experience, they're going to our CO2 warehouse, which is the bubbly one. So, as I said before, customers tend to pick their own. And in food and wine, we can differentiate. Coffee is the same everywhere, so they can find the same coffee. And of course, the energy of our staff is the same, so they can find their warmth and hospitality to each one of our stores.
Perfect. So we got a question here, which is really interesting. It says, how do you pick your coffee origins for your menu? Is it by listening to consumers? Asking because perhaps wine consumers could be picky. Like, how do you pick your coffee menu?
Okay. First of all, that's a really good question, by the way. First of all, we try to combine all elements in one store: coffee, wine, food, and spirits. So our selection comes to a variety of things. Like we try not to, we try to give them the best quality in value that can afford. Okay, since we're not special, we're not espresso points, we are an all-day store. We keep it, let's say, in terms of one product to be um, not to overshadow the next one, but to be in balance, if I may say. So we're picking our coffee origins first of all according to our client needs, and let's say that if I can ask to the question, we really like Latin America. We love Latin America. Also Ethiopia, and wine consumers can be picky, but when they can find the wine they really like, along with coffee that they can enjoy, everything's getting very, very easy.
How big is your wine list?
In which one of our stores?
Let's go to your main store.
We have our main store, which is warehouse special blends. We have wine list up to 400 different labels. 30% of those labels are from outside Greece, and 70% are Greek vineyard. And we have one of the most complete lists for champagne in CO2 throughout Europe. So we are very proud of it.
Perfect. So just to capture this conversation, you started from coffee.
Yep.
You ended up running an all-day store in
No.
utilizing an asset for almost 20 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to people that they're running coffee shops around Greece, around Europe, in how to utilize their assets better?
I cannot give an advice, but I can state that the team goes further, much further than the sole appearance of someone. No matter how talented he is or not. I'm very proud, and I'm very, very happy to announce it that my partners and I, we tend to have family bonds with among us, because as you can understand, this structure cannot be utilized by me or by someone else from my partners team. So if I may suggest some things to everyone in the team, has a sole role, and someone needs to give the guidance. So it's a team effort, and team's role. That's on us. I mean, that's our point.
George, thank you so much.
Oh.
It's been really a pleasure to have you today. I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed that we were able finally to sit next to each other and have this conversation. Moving forward, I would like to invite you to stay with us. In around half an hour from now, we're going to go to our next session, which is responsible design strategies. Thank you for watching Retail Summit today. Have a great day.
Bye.
My name is Julie Hausch, SCA Knowledge Development Manager. Our final talk for this iteration of Coffee Retail Summit is Responsible Design Strategies, and we're joined by Rhiannon Laurie, Workplace Sustainability and Wellbeing Design Strategist with Gensler in London. At Gensler, Rhiannon helps promote responsible design at every stage of the design process and embed it into company culture. Before speaking with her, we only had a small idea of what sustainability might mean in the context of workplace design. And it's Rhiannon's passion driving us towards a healthy, carbon-positive, circular economy future that makes this talk really special. Please welcome Rhiannon Laurie. Rhiannon, hand over to you and take it away.
Thank you. I will share my slide. Okay, so yes, Julie's just done my introduction. So I'm a sustainability and wellbeing workplace strategist at the global design firm Gensler. So I work with a wide range of clients to help kind of embed sustainability and wellbeing into their workplaces through a wide variety of strategies. And I've also added my contact email. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So I'll be going through three main things today. So first of all, what makes a design responsible? And then looking at specifically responsible material and product attributes. And then what you can do to create a didactic or educational space to help your building or your building users or occupants learn about sustainability and well-being. So first, starting with what makes a design responsible. So first of all, designing for planetary health, and this includes environmental sustainability, promoting biodiversity, and helping to regenerate natural systems so that we're not utilizing too much raw materials or any new raw materials, and we're just keeping the materials that are already in use in use. And then designing also for human health, which includes socially equitable sourcing, designing for health and well-being, and also inclusive design, making sure that the design can be used by all. And so all of these together would create a responsible design. So if we think about specifically materials and how we would source those materials responsibly, the first thing you would look at is sustainable sourcing. So sourcing products with verifiable claims from manufacturers that are actively aiming to reduce the product's adverse environmental health and impacts. Sorry, environmental and health impacts. And then looking at sustainable content of the products or materials. So how much of it is recycled? Is it sustainably harvested? Are there any bio-based materials within the product? And then the circular economy, so avoiding any waste going to landfill and keeping products in use for as long as possible and closing that loop. And then making sure that the materials are healthy, so that there's no hazardous chemicals that are affecting human health in any way. And so these are all the different kind of strategies or attributes that go along with each of these categories that we'll look into in more detail. And just to kind of go into a bit more depth into the circular economy, the goal, when it comes to circular economy, the goal is obviously to minimize or completely avoid any waste going to landfill whatsoever. So if this circle is kind of a material or product that's in use, before specifying any new materials or products, so before specifying this product, there are are a number of things we can do. So we can refuse to specify that product. Maybe there's another way. Maybe you don't need to specify something. You know, really kind of figure out a way you could do it without the product, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. You could rethink how to build your space. Maybe you can use a different type of material, or, you know, really think of a different option, or you can just try and use less of it. So those are the three things that you should do before specifying a new material. And then once you have specified, or once you're using anything that's already in use, so reuse would be your first go-to option in terms of specifying materials. So reuse something that already exists. And then if you can't reuse straight away without doing any refurbishment, you could repurpose, remanufacture, refurbish, or repair. So those are your next kind of options in terms of impact. And then your kind of last resort would be to recycle the material or product. And then before going to landfill, you can recover energy from the product. This usually involves burning materials, like through combustion, which is not the best option, but it's still a way to recover something from the material that's already in use. And then the ultimate goal, as mentioned, is that we want to avoid landfill completely. So I've put this in pink because that affects human health, because avoiding landfill obviously keeps any plastics or harmful chemicals out of our water systems. And also avoiding landfill creates more jobs, because it puts greater focus on repurposing, remanufacturing, refurbishing, all of these things that provide communities with more jobs. So then moving on to responsible product and material attributes. So what you should be looking for when you're sourcing or specifying materials and products. There's 12 different things that we'll go through, and I've kind of color coded them as to whether or not it's focusing on supporting environmental design or health and well-being. So first of all, recycled content. Obviously, the more percentage of recycled content that you can have in your products, the better. And just ensure that you're kind of reusing as much as you can of what already exists. And this is a good option when it comes to creating durable materials. So for example, this recycled glass aggregate in terrazzo countertop. So it's a nice way of having kind of a responsibly sourced option that is durable. Bio-based content. So it helps reduce the amount of carbon that's required to produce a product, and is often more biodegradable than synthetic materials. So non-hazardous chemicals. The Institute of the ILFI, the Institute of Living Futures, no, the International Living Futures Institute, sorry, they have a red list online that should be kind of avoided. So you can check that out and just ensure that your products don't have any of those red list materials in them. And also they have a great database that you can look for materials that have this red list free certification. But yeah, just the idea is that all products are completely free of any hazardous chemicals. Low emitting materials. So products undergo third-party testing to determine the amount of VOCs emitted from the product as it cures and off gases. And so the goal is to specify products that are low in these VOCs, and it applies especially to paints and any coatings that you might be using within your space. Any kind of electrical goods that you're specifying, you should be looking for energy efficient products, and that includes LED bulbs or anything with a high efficiency rating. So the construction industry and the commercial industry have a huge impact on waste generated, not just in the UK but across the world. So this is a place where we really need to make headway in terms of how much we're reducing waste, and so specifying recyclable or biodegradable products is a great way to achieve that, so that they can be reused at the end of their use. Specify products or systems that can be disassembled and reused. So this could be demountable partitions or any products really, and a great way to do this is by avoiding any glues. And for example, there's this carpet that you can install with removable pressure sensitive adhesives instead of having any kind of glue, which makes it difficult to reuse or disassemble. A lot of suppliers offer take-back programs. So once you've finished, once a carpet or a ceiling tile or any product has reached the end of use, the end of life for which you're using it, suppliers often will take back those materials and then recycle them into new products. So low embodied carbon, this is the amount of carbon that a product uses in terms of production, transportation, and installation, is reported on their environmental product declaration. So if you're specifying any materials or products, be sure to check out their environmental product declaration and kind of get an idea for whether or not it has a kind of a higher or lower global warming potential. Locally sourcing, so this is something that affects both the environment and kind of local economies, but the closer you can have the material sourced, the lower the embodied carbon in terms of transportation to site. And this diagram at the top is from the Living Building Challenge, and they to achieve certification, they state that at least 20% of the material source should be from within 500 kilometers of the site. Social equity and supply chains. There are a number of raw and composite materials that are at higher risk of embedded slavery, so those should be avoided. And also designers and contractors can actively promote social equity by specifying from minority owned businesses or female owned businesses or disabled owned businesses. And then finally, sustainably or responsibly sourcing. So just looking out for these third-party certifications that verify the sustainable sourcing and manufacturing practices. So just a few things on how to create didactic spaces or spaces that help us to learn about sustainability and well-being design. Try and tell the story of the product. So, you know, even if it's just with a simple label, explain where the product has come from and tell that story as to maybe what the impact is of using it, and help users to learn that it might be better to try and reuse something than to specify something new. And so this is an example from one of the projects I worked on, and we we added labels to the back of a lot of the furniture just to tell the story as to where we'd found it and how old it was, and that by reusing it, we were saving X amount of carbon. So so provide some really clear point of decision signage. I think recycling's a really tough thing for some people, especially when you're pushed for time. It's really hard to kind of figure out where things are going. So the clearer that you can be with signage in terms of what to do with waste, the better. And showcase your progress. It doesn't need to be on using digital signage, even if it's just, if you're in a coffee shop and you're kind of tracking your progress, that you saved X amount of waste this month compared to last month, or just kind of show that you yourself are tracking it, and show your customers or employees how well you're doing and how that compares to others. Kind of gamifying your progress. And then make responsible design prominent in the space, and really promote the use of natural materials, responsibly sourced natural materials, and making a space kind of more focused on connecting employees or users with nature. It doesn't necessarily have to involve just plants. It can be using something like cross-laminated timber, like in this space, or promoting good daylight across the space, or even just having the staircase be more prominent than the elevator, so that people see the stairs first and kind of choose that active mode of getting upstairs instead of the elevator. So yeah, that's all from me. And again, if you have any questions or are interested in having any consulting about designing for sustainability or health and wellbeing in your spaces, please contact me at Rhiannon_Laurie@gensler.com. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhiannon. Do you have time for actually a couple of questions?
Yeah,
a couple that came up with your presentation. I'm curious, this is something you do for workspaces, like this sort of analysis and then these recommendations and helping design and build out. Would you recommend, if I'm like a retailer either looking to renovate my space, or if I'm looking to build a new coffee shop space, for example, do you have like a guideline of like, does this cost more than a normal construction, or how much should I budget for considerations like being more sustainable like this?
Difficult question. It really varies, and it would depend on how ambitious you want to be. There are so many different levels of sustainability and designing for health and well-being, and they all cost a different level. Mm-hmm. Being sustainable doesn't cost more than just designing normally, especially if it's kind of the baseline level versus the most ambitious or industry leading. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it definitely shouldn't cost you more to just consider the basics.
Great. I know, I think people oftentimes are like, well, it must cost more, but that's great. It doesn't have to cost more. It doesn't always cost more. That's great. And I'm also curious about, when we met before your talk, you were talking about how your role in particular has developed over time. Can you speak a little bit to that, about, the progression? I think people are getting more and more interested in well-being design spaces. Like, how have you seen that space grow for you or for the industry as overall for the past few years?
Yeah, so COVID has definitely been a huge part of this. Pre-COVID, definitely clients were focused on health and well-being of occupants, much more than sustainability, for sure. I think that's because, you know, it directly impacts the people, and it's a lot more kind of tangible in terms of designing the space, you know, certain space types that you would include, or, you know, it's a lot easier to relate to than sustainability. And that definitely increased a lot because of COVID and everyone's huge focus on designing for health, especially. And then subsequently, the world's focus on global health also came into this, meaning that clients are also asking for sustainability to be at the forefront of their designs. And the difference between pre-COVID and now in terms of how many clients are asking for sustainable designs, it's night and day. Which is super
everyone wants
exciting.
to talk about it now, right?
Yeah, super exciting.
That's great. That's what we want to hear. Awesome. How about I think everyone will probably rush. I think we'd all love to work with you, but if, you know, outside the UK or if we're in other markets, is there a way to recommend, you know, is there a resource that you could recommend if I'm looking to find someone like you? Or how would I, you know, because I think some of this stuff can get overwhelming of like, okay, I have my checklist that you just provided us of ways to consider designing a space or repurposing a space, but it's also nice to get an expert like yourself in. So are there other databases, or how would you recommend finding someone like yourself in maybe another market?
Yeah, how to find other people like me in other markets. Well, I mean, I would just start.
Find you, really, yeah.
I don't want to send anyone else.
Yeah.
No, I would just say, depending on the market, just go to whichever company's website and just look up the sustainability specialists or strategists. There's so many, anything that has the word sustainability in it, it tends to do the job. And then, or just on LinkedIn, I'm sure that there's a ton of people on there with the same kind of background and skills. Oh, databases. Yeah, there's a few different databases depending on which region you're in. So, for example, in the US, Materials Bank, and Mindful Materials. Those are two great resources where you can kind of source things and filter materials by location, by sustainability certification. You know, they have some great filters so you can look and understand kind of much more about each of the products.
Yeah.
And then if you're in Europe, it would be kind of Cradle to Cradle or Ecomedes, Declare Label. Lots of different databases out there. I don't want to exclude any if I've forgotten them. So, and many.
It's a short list. Yeah, it's not an exhaustive list. I put you on the spot too. And this might feel like a silly question a bit, but I'm very curious. Like, is there a material that is probably the worst to work with in your experience? Where you're like, please stop using this material. Like,
oh gosh. Well, I mean, the ones that you shouldn't be using are probably it's not legal anymore, or you know, like asbestos. Obviously, like that's the starting point. But other than that, well, one huge one is polystyrene, or I think you call it something different in the US.
Styrofoam.
Styrofoam, yeah. Especially when it comes to having it touch anything you eat, for sure. So yeah, anything that involves styrofoam is a no.
Which is a big deal with coffee, right? It's like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so if it relates to food, no styrofoam. But honestly, the what I mentioned in the presentation is it's the red list materials. So anything that's on that list of red list materials, you just shouldn't be using, or just trying to avoid at all costs, really.
Great. I know. And we'll link that in the chat too for everyone watching. Is there material actually on the opposite end of that you really love? I mean, the earlier image you had in your slideshow of the recycled glass terrazzo, I was like, oh, I didn't know. Like, that's actually so beautiful. I'd love to see that in a space. So.
Yeah, that it is. Yeah, you can get some beautiful recycled countertops, or at least like the content.
Yeah.
Also, a great material that's kind of up and coming right now is called mycelium, and there's a photo actually of a lamp. Thank you. Go back to where it is.
Isn't that like fungus or mushrooms?
Yeah,
usually?
So it's made from mushrooms. Yeah, but how stunning is that lamp to be entirely biodegradable? So yeah, anything that can be made from mycelium, I think I think they make bricks now as well. But yeah, that's a great one.
Does it hold up? Does it have like a long lifespan, or is it just because it looks very fragile and delicate too? So.
I'm not too sure of lifespan, but definitely entirely biodegradable, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. Great. I have so many questions, but also we could probably just go down rabbit holes all day. So, but I won't keep you. So thank you again so much for joining us. I super appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been great.
So that concludes our Coffee Retail Summit. Thank you to all of our speakers who joined us over these past 2 days. We've heard from leaders across Europe about their company's approach to coffee retail and ways to think about coffee retail in a new light. If you missed any of the talks or want to hear a talk again, we'll be uploading the recordings on this website, retail.sca.coffee. In the meantime, the resource library is available for you to catch up on other articles, research, or past talks curated, especially with coffee retailers in mind. We hope you've enjoyed the summit and will continue to use the Retail Summit resource library. Before I go, I want to do a final thanks and final shout out to our sponsors. Our title sponsor, BWT Water and More, who provided you the resources for us to be able to bring this to you today. Also, a special thanks to our lead sponsors, Baratza and San Remo, as well as a thank you to our supporting sponsors, Frankie and Marco. And finally, last but not least, a huge thank you to the SCA staff for hosting these talks and helping out behind the scenes. There's so many of them that you don't see, but they really help make the summit possible. And finally, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you soon online or in person at a coffee shop.